School Library. We have everyone in attendance, which is wonderful, and we'll start with the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, 4A is consideration and approval of the minutes. You'll see there's 3 sets of minutes going back to our last meeting in June. So I don't know if anybody remembers that far back, but if there's any questions or comments on those. If not, we'll take a motion to move them. John and Valley. All those in favor? None opposed? Thank you. Okay, adjustments to the agenda? None. That's easy. Good news and recognition, report in Freeport High School student government. I believe Jen is going to doing that this evening.
I am. Good evening. So lots of things that are happening at the high school right now. Lots of great things for our first weeks of school. Starting off with our wonderful building. We are really excited for all of the new elements of the building to be up and running, and students are really loving the new spaces. Our tours went well. We had just about over 100 people that came to come for the tours the night of our open house, a lot of them being alumni and parents of alumni, which was and our ninth graders have had a really strong start to the year. We've had great feedback from kids and parents. The mentor program helped them have a strong start, and they're feeling good about their classes, and our teachers are working really hard to be fully immersed in our proficiency-based world. We have also been working with Julie Nickerson to make some revisions to the Moore Street program to make that as efficient as we can, where our students go over and work either in a classroom or with individual students at Moore Street. And we've just added some details to that to make it a better and stronger program for kids who really are interested in working with the younger students. In athletics, we've been really excited to watch the progress of the new track and field. Some of the turf went down today, so that was, we had some faces looking out the window today during the day, not during class. And our teams are in the middle of their season, and they are working hard and doing quite well. And we had one of our female golfers, Molly Whalen, who's a sophomore, qualify for the state tournament for the second year in a row. So it's been exciting to watch Molly play. For our co-curriculars, our fall musical is in the works. It's the musical that has been selected is 9 to 5, which a lot of people are familiar with that. And the cast is working hard to prepare for the show in November. We have a new civil rights team, which students approached some staff at school, hoping that they could start that new club, which is a voluntary club, discussing pertinent issues tied to civil rights at school. And we have a really exciting special event coming up, which is Friday, October 20th. It is, and I'm not mistaken when I'm saying this, at 6 a.m. in our gym. It's from 6 to 8 a.m. and it's called the School Spirit Challenge. So Channel 13 News will be here, and we will be live on air, and we're competing against 8 other schools, area schools, to benefit Good Shepherd Food Bank and Freeport Community Services. So the idea is classes compete against one another to raise as much money and bring in as much canned food as they can. And then that morning, they'll demonstrate teams, clubs, the band. There may or may not be a pie in my face for the best fundraising class. And we're really excited. There's a virtual website set up, and we've raised $2,500 of our $5,000 goal so far. And all of that money will go to Good Shepherd Food Bank and Freeport Community Services. What's the website? That is a great question. If you go on our high school website, I am sure it is linked there. Or it will be tomorrow morning.
Great. Oh, Becky.
So Jen and I have talked about having a student rep for the board. We talked about this last spring, but I just kind of wanted to bring it up again. And we'd talked about having elections and having somebody on board at the next board meeting if that is the will of the board.
Yeah? Everybody good with that? Yeah. Great.
So we're thinking 2 kids so that they can switch off and on. And I said it'd be great if we had a male and a female, but we'll see how the elections end up.
Great. So we'll start those elections next week.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Public comment. There are a few members of the public with us tonight. Don't run each other over to get to the podium. Okay. Public comment is closed. We'll move on to 8, superintendent's report.
Okay, so I'm happy to report that the beginning of the year has gone also very well. The custodial maintenance staff worked extremely hard all summer. It was especially challenging here at the high school because of the renovations going on up until I think it was August 25th. So they really had to scurry at the end, but everything was ready to go on the first day. So a big thank you to Dennis Willett and his staff for a job well done. With some slight tweaks, transportation is now going smoothly, even with the addition of the Durham buses and staff. The state assessment, I emailed the board today, just came out on Monday. All the latest results from the MEA are now public, and so there's a link where you can go in and look at all the data. All of our administrators are currently reviewing their data. We're still analyzing the data, but one piece of great news is that we scored very strongly in science, because I know we were talking about that recently, with Durham scoring the highest in the state. So that's really great news. Yeah. So last Friday and Saturday, through the leadership of Susan D., our literacy specialist, we hosted what they call Nerd Camp. It's a workshop focused on literacy. We had 160 participants. 20 of our own RSU 5 staff participated. Other people came as far away as New Brunswick, Philadelphia. It was a big hit. 35 authors were here and led some of the sessions. The class of 2018 provided the lunch as a fundraising event. We had local businesses such as Bow Street, Sherman Books, and Dunkin' Donuts donating and helping out with the event. And so we're really hoping to make this a yearly event, as it's really one way to really positively highlight the district. And I guess there were a lot of rave reviews about the high school renovation. They had it here. If you have a chance, I would encourage you to stop by the Moore Street Playground. The new look is about 90% complete, and the students, I think, are really loving the new playground, which has a sandbox. It has a place to build fairy houses, a musical wall. It's really going well. I was over there today. I have 2 resignations to report. Diane Shabbat is an ed tech at Durham. She's retiring effective this Friday. And then we had a custodian, Lenny Skelton, resign last week. So on your gray sheet in your packet, you have a list of all the summer resignations and the new hires. I will not take the time to read that, but it's just there for your information. And then included in your packet are our current enrollment numbers on your orange sheet. And our student enrollment numbers show that we have 61 more students than at the beginning of the last school year. So that exceeded our projected enrollment number by 43. And over the last 2 years now, we've seen our student enrollment number increase by a total of 97 students. So that's great news, I think, for the district. And then just a reminder that the 44th annual MSMA Fall Conference is coming up. This year they're calling it Public Schools Learning for Life. That's on October 26th and 27th. There are lots of sessions, including You've Been Served, Board Members in Court. Thought that would pique your interest. And Making Wishes Come True. So I think there are always a lot of great conferences and offerings there Please let Jenny know by Thursday, October 5th, if you're interested in attending, and she'll sign you up. And that concludes my report for tonight.
Okay. So you guys will see later on our agenda for this evening, we have the resolutions for the MSMA delegate conference. I don't know what they call it. Assembly, delegate assembly. So we'll talk about those in a little bit. So, and also elect the delegate and the alternate, right?
Exactly.
So more to come on that one later in the evening. Michelle, yes.
About the report. 2 questions. One is on the fall conference, the MSMA. For those of us who are unable to attend, is it possible to use some of the entry fee for that to do some other development?
Sure. Sometimes Drummond Woodsum will do different workshops for board members, and I think that we try to send that out, but if we haven't been good about that, we'll try to get better. So
Okay.
yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. And the other question I had was about student enrollments. When we have student enrollment go up so much during the summer, when do we get paid by the state for all the new enrolled students? When do when does the money from the state come to us? Is
So-
it for the next budget, or does it trickle in this year? How does that work?
So the subsidy is based upon the October 1st enrollment.
Okay.
And so from that, Michelle, I guess I'll look to you. I would think that we're getting it a year later.
We are always getting it a year later.
We are. Okay.
Yeah, and they do an average. It's not just October enrollment, but it's an average of October and April.
Okay, so October and April the following spring.
Yes.
Okay. So this year, right now, we're getting the money from last year's
year.
enrollment.
That is
Okay.
correct.
All right. Well, I guess we'll benefit when we see students go, but I wish it were otherwise. I would like to see the money coming with the students. Thank you.
It would be nice, but it's hard for them to turn that around so quickly.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Jeremy.
One of the questions, the numbers at Moore Street were certainly, we sort of expected the middle school numbers to go up because of the current 6th grade. But if we had any insight into the Moore Street numbers with 23 more than had been
Pre-K?
expected?
So pre-K would be the biggest factor there because we
Okay.
added that class. But there were a few more, I think, in kindergarten. And if you remember, we did add a teacher there.
Good. Okay, so I didn't realize pre-K would be.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, thank you.
Everybody good?
So pre-K, if I'm remembering correctly, was about 100.
Well, we added, what,
No.
2 more sessions? So we already had some pre-K kids, and they were getting
Right.
picked up already. So I think we expanded it to another 32 kids. Is that right? What? Yeah, we're just talking about more
I was
students.
just trying to
we
get a little bit
addition.
more clarity conceptually, because I was like, wow, 100 new students in 2 years, that's a lot. But if you have a whole new program,
Right.
that's
Whole
like
nother
additional
grade.
grades.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
so the
not-
question
Well,
is-
so
it's not as
So it wasn't a new
Wowzers.
program, but we did add another session. And then we also redid it so that we weren't accepting the 3-year-olds. Do you remember that? And we're having the pre-K presentation at October 11th.
Okay.
So we'll hear more about that. And so that gave us some more kids in that session.
To follow up with that comment, in the absence of all the new pre-K enrolled students, what would the grand total be for current enrollment? Do you have that?
I would have to do some subtraction.
But, I mean, you can't just subtract them all out because some of the programs, like Pownell
already
had
there.
a half-day program, Durham.
Right.
Yeah,
Durham
but I mean,
So
fulfilled
if
last
I
year.
had to guess, I would say, and it's a little bit tricky because in the past, I don't think, for example, at Pownell, I'm not sure that we even had a full pre-K. So we did receive a few more kids in pre-K at Pownell. And then you're adding 16 more for the new session and then probably another 4. So I would say probably because of our pre-K, we might have an increase of about 23, I would say.
yeah, I mean, that's still
Oh, yeah,
a really nice rise in enrollment overall.
exactly.
Yeah.
You can hear the kids on the playground from here.
Yeah.
Okay? ready to move on to Michelle with the finance.
Okay, so your purple sheets. I would just like to immediately point out one thing. I have not encumbered the debt service. We are going to be paying that. Don't think that's available money. It will be encumbered the next time you see this. So far, the year started off fine. Haven't had any bumps financial-wise. Everything's, we've actually started the audit process about 5 weeks earlier than we had in the prior year, so we're expected to finish it all on time. We did have a couple of bumps as far as the start of the school year when it came to payroll, because we did have a new HR coordinator and a new director. So between the two of us, this was our first time around. So there were a few bumps in the road there. But I think we've got them resolved and figured out so that next year it will not be bumpy. So we do, on the HR side, have a couple of temporary positions opened. We are filling them very quickly, though. I mean, we get them out there and they're filled within less than a week. So I can hear them. Hey, they're having fun. That's good. Right. But overall, things are running smoothly. I'm not seeing anything unanticipated, and everything is looking on track for where I think it should have been at this point in time.
Any questions for Michelle?
Can I just have a refresher? What are the big debt service things? We've got the renovation,
The renovation, the Durham school, so the state gives us the money, but we then have to give it back as debt service. The roof on the Durham school that's no longer
That no
there.
longer exists.
The middle school, right? There's still
There's
a
a middle
note out
school
there on the middle
renovation.
school edition.
The central office had a piece of renovation.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks for the refresher.
All right. Thanks, Michelle. Oh, Kate, sorry.
I think at the last meeting, folks were looking for an update on the billing for
Title I.
Title I.
Bill, oh, yes. We are completely current through May. I have not filed the June one because we're in the middle of the audit. So I did not want to file June until the audit is complete, because there are still some pieces going back and forth for cleanup. And then that should be all set and done next week, and then it will be a matter of boom, boom, boom to get the next 2 months out.
Good.
And how soon do you expect to get payment for that bill?
Payment turns around in less than 3 days.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah, can't really complain about that.
Nope.
Everybody good? All right, thank you. Okay, unfinished business update on the track and field. Are we turning this over to John?
We are to start. We have several pieces to our update, but John's going to start us off with
The good news.
The technical pieces. Oh, yeah, and the good news.
Jen rained on my good news and stole it.
Didn't rain on it.
Well, she kind of stole my thunder, but all right. So yes, the good news is the turf contractor has mobilized on site. They arrived on Monday. They started pulling kind of the string lines to check all the grades, and started doing layout work, and today started putting in some of the first of the turf. So that's the really good news. The lights are up. I think everyone has seen that. I don't think I've talked to the board since then. The electrical connection is set to go in for that on October 6th, because it actually impacts the Moore Street School, because it comes off from the same transformer. So we've planned an electrical shutdown to make those connections for the professional learning day, because it requires CMP to be there, and CMP is not going to work on the weekends for us. And so that was the first kind of window where we could run the electrical over for the new lighting system. But that's in pretty good shape. Now that the contractor has the turf in process and can move their equipment out of that, they'll be shifting focus to sidewalks, lawn areas outside of the track, and over to softball. So they'll freeze up the crews that have been working on grades for the track and grades for the field, and those crews can work on drainage, loam and seed, sidewalks, softball. We've been wrestling through a little bit of an issue with the softball because there was actually a utility fiber optic pole owned by L.O. Bean there. We have it scheduled finally. It's been a little bit of a lengthy process finding the old easements and who's responsible for doing what under the easements, and then getting the fiber optic contractor scheduled, and then them scheduling a outage on that piece of fiber for the L.O. Bean network. Because what it is they've created a ring around the town for redundancy, and now we're asking to cut a hole in that ring so we can move the pole. So it's been tense, but I think everything's finally scheduled so we can move that pole and finish the grading on softball. And so that's in good shape. Timeline, we are behind schedule. The initial contract date, I'll just kind of walk through the timeline for everybody, because I don't know that everyone on the board's heard all of this piece, and I don't know that I stood up in front of you since last May or June. So our initial contract completion date was September 15th. Early in the project, the retaining wall, the contractor proposed kind of an alternate product, and we initially thought the product looked okay. We said go ahead and proceed with that product, submitting the rest of the technical engineering information on that product. Once we had that and we got some more feedback from the design team and others and some of the sub consultants on the design side, we ended up rejecting that product and going back to a system that was more consistent with the initial design, which is the blocks you see out there. So at that time we extended their contract for 2 weeks because there was obviously lost time in that whole process. That was in early June. In July, the contractor discovered what we call unsuitable soils. So this was areas where there were stumps buried, where there were old brush piles, where maybe some of the turf had been plowed off into areas, even a little bit of trash in a few areas with some building debris and tires and a few other things that were buried in little pockets out around the field. So we actually ended up taking out over 1,000, almost actually 1,912 cubic yards of material. The contractor hauled on 7 different days in the month of July. They actually had asked for an extension of 15 days because of this impact. We pushed back, and we ended up settling at a 10-day extension because of that. We counted up the number of days they had impact. Some of those days it only had a half-day impact or a couple-hour impact. So we kind of negotiated a final settlement. We know we spent a little bit of time in the beginning determining, once the first time they discovered it, what do we want to put back for material? Yes, that's a suitable material. That's the suitable process to put that material back. So when we executed that change order, we gave them a contract of October 13th. And that currently is our contract completion date, and as it sits right now with the contractor. But in July, we really have started to have some concerns about the contractor's progress, and started having weekly meetings with myself and Dennis and the design team and the contractor. Dr. Foley joined us on several of those, and just trying to remove any roadblocks from the contractor to make sure they kept making progress. We didn't want an RSU issue to be slowing them down, or something the design team maybe didn't respond to quick enough and things like that. They continue to struggle with schedule. They continue to kind of struggle with catching traction. If something could go wrong, it seemed like it did go wrong. They had some real challenges this summer. So we actually put the contractor on written notice, we call it, on August 30th. And basically what we told the contractor was, we have a fixed completion date, and we reserve all the rights we have in the contract, including to use liquidated damages of $1,000 a day if they default on their contract. That's where we stand right now with the contract. We have not increased the contract time, and it's a little bit of a balancing act of, we want them to get it done. We don't want to get tied up and have them demobilize or get tied up with a lot of legal fees, but we got to still keep them moving ahead. And we got to protect ourselves that if they do default on this and we do have added costs, which we are starting to see some added cost from the consultants on the design team having to spend extra time, the extra time for the clerk of the works. If we do miss any use for the sporting teams, the district will incur some costs. So we're really trying to set the tone that if we have costs, that we may look to recover those costs to try to keep them engaged. Their response is they have added operators, they've added equipment to the site. They brought in some second contractors to work on the concrete during the concrete phase of the project, and they've added construction hours, but they also gave us a schedule showing that they anticipated completion on November 3rd so the last item out there is really the track, and the whole track comes down to when's it get paved and when does the coating go onto the track. When we did that, there was a certain date they needed to have the paving in. They actually missed that date, and then paving was actually finished on Tuesday. Once the pavement it is in, we have a 4-week cure time for that pavement before we can put the track material on. And then we need to have 3 weeks of temperatures above 50 without weather in order to install the track surface. So we're in a pretty tight spot with the track. The contractor gave us an updated schedule about 3 o'clock this afternoon that actually showed a November, let me make sure I get the right date here, November 9th completion. And that, of course, is with the optimistic piece that, the ground temperature stays up and we don't have the rainy days that we haven't had all summer come in, and the installer can be efficient with the install. We've asked the contractor to have their principal at our next requisition meeting, which is in 2 weeks, at the meeting. At the next meeting tomorrow, they're going to have the track and field installer to just talking about what are our options to deal with the track as far as temperature, if it is too cold, what happens if we start installing and we have to reach a stop where we say we don't want to risk the quality of the finished product because the weather conditions aren't favorable, and a variety of other kind of issues about how do we get to the finish line on the project. So we've been on it pretty hard, and we've been pushing the contractor pretty hard. I'd rather be standing here right now with a finished track, which was, if we'd been on schedule, we would have done. But we're working diligently to try to keep the contractor moving, and they get it. Things have not broken well for them. If there are things that could not go right for them, they seem to have not gone right for them. So we knew we had an aggressive schedule, we had an aggressive project in a tight market. So these things unfortunately do happen, but we're going to try to get out of it the best we can.
So the new schedule that they sent out, that's only 20 days between paving and. So did they go back to 20 days?
I don't know.
Because originally
That's
it was
what he's
21
showing.
days is what they always said.
Right.
And then last week or 2 weeks ago, they said, no, it's 28 days. So that'll back to 21 days? Okay. We'll find out tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah.
I
We'll
mean,
ask that
the
question
schedule came in at 3 o'clock. I was on a bus with kids going to Harriers practice, so I didn't get to go through it and go back and drill him on all the things that he tweaked yet.
Okay.
That's why we have a job meeting tomorrow.
Questions for John? Valerie?
I wanted to ask about the bleachers, because that was one of the alternatives that we approved, and I see it's on the not prioritized or funded.
Right. Actually, I think Becky's going to give an update on that piece next.
Yep.
Okay.
So John, what are the options if the temperature does go up to maintain the track at 50 degrees or higher during those 3 weeks when they need to install? Is there like a heated mat? That
That's
they can
what
put
we're.
on, or-
That's what we're struggling about. I mean, in construction, we do at times use heat wagons, and you lay out tubing over a surface to keep it warm, and then you throw over basically the tarps, the blue tarps that everyone's seen. They're double layered with a little bit of fiberglass thrown into them, and often they're black so that they absorb some sun. One of our questions was, is it feasible to use that to protect the track and get us to the finish line? And that's part of that whole conversation we're going to have with the track and field installer. Can they bring in a jet blower that they use on the NASCAR races? I don't know. I mean, at this point, it's up to them to solve. And they are going to probably have some additional expense to get there because we have $1,000 a calendar day penalty potentially that they would owe. I really hope that we don't have to go there, but that's what is in our contract to try to protect us.
John, there is no finish line.
I wasn't going to touch that.
Seems really fitting at this point. Lindsay,
Did you say, what's the difference between air temperature and ground temperature? You said the ground, I just wondered, what I should be freaking out about when as the weather reports happen for the next,
It's, it is the ground temperature. It's the actual temperature of the ground. So that, which might get us a little bit of time If we can have some sunny days and we get the sun's energy working on the ground, that can get us some days that where maybe the air temperature isn't quite as high as we want, but maybe the ground temperature allows us to work.
We could get the whole community to sleep out on it.
Right. There's we have been asked whether we could put a giant hoop house over the whole thing. We've been asked lots of things. It's certainly a big challenge. The fallback, the doomsday, I don't think we really want to go there, is that, which we talked about a little bit at the committee, we've talked about a little bit with Craig, is we stop the track and we get the turf and we use the turf for spring lacrosse, and we finish the track when the weather conditions are favorable, that we get a quality product that'll last. I think the last thing any of us really want to do is push the track to get installed and then have problems with the quality for the life of the product. So that's the balancing act we're gonna have to walk.
And some of that might get removed from our say, right? I mean, the track installer is the one who has to accept that they can deliver what, because they're the ones who hold the warranty on this, right? Not the guys who are putting in the field. It's the track installer who do. So, if they're not confident that they can put in a quality product, they might be like, sorry guys, we'll see you in the spring.
Right.
If they can't come up with a solution that they feel is gonna, because they don't wanna get in that situation either. So it's not just us that falls to, I think, which is good.
So what is the deadline for the turf to be completed?
The turf,
are we on schedule on that part of the project, and when would that be finished?
It's not where it initially should have been.
But we should be done, right? I mean,
but
we should be
the
done
install right now, there shouldn't be any hurdles now, short of weather. It's scheduled to go until the 18th right now of October on the schedule we just received today.
Okay.
Our goalposts have we encumbered the goalposts, or are those not yet part of the project?
Those are part of the contract, yes. Yep, all that type of equipment is part of the contract.
Any other questions for John? Okay. Yes.
We've been
I know,
thinking
everybody
those
who
all
said
summer.
they're done with this heat?
Yeah.
No. We're not done yet. We need it for a bit longer. Yeah. Yeah, we need the track done, so. Thank you, John. Okay, back to the artwork.
Not quite. We
No?
want to talk about the finance.
Oh, you want to talk about
Yeah.
finance, right.
So in your packet on the green sheet was, we kind of laid it out two ways for you, depending on the type of learner you are. So what we and the committee talked about this. So what we basically have left over at this point in the money is $127,000. And back in
Actually, it's 115.
Oh, are we down to 115?
Because of the turf, the sod in the softball field that the committee approved 2 weeks ago.
Thank you.
So 115.
So we're spending money quickly, as you can see. So back in April, as you can see, you had a motion where you gave me permission to add all these different alternates over the summer. And really, they've been added except for the bleachers. And if you also remember at that meeting, Michelle recommended that we put in $150,000 extra from our budget from last year. And when she made that motion, or when she talked about that, she said we might use those for things like the PA system, the shed, and you mentioned one other thing. Scoreboard, thank you. And so we have purchased the scoreboard. But now the committee is grappling with, okay, we don't have enough money to fund everything that's remaining. So that's what we talked about at the last committee meeting. And there has been other fundraising efforts that are taking place. And there's a lot of momentum about funding the bleachers. But I wanted us to just kind of talk about that as a board and make sure that you're comfortable with the recommendation from the committee. So the recommendation from the committee is to use that remaining money on the bleachers, with the exception of, which we didn't even talk about in the spring, but you remember at the board, the budget meeting, the annual budget meeting, the issue of the dugouts came up. And there were concerns around Title IX. And I've researched that, and we're fine as far as Title IX. But the committee really felt like we should do something about that. So I spoke to Dennis, and Dennis feels like the maintenance department can handle building the dugouts over the winter as long as the project funds the materials. We've also been pretty creative because a lot of the track and field equipment is already in. And so we're using the portable that used to be used for the renovation project to store a lot of the equipment. And we think we can store the remaining if we just rent a storage pod at the cost of $125 a month. And we're in talks with Region 10 to see if they could possibly build the shed, which would cut down dramatically on the cost. And we think we could probably get that done in the next year or so. So that's really what and no one felt like the PA system was a priority when we looked at those 4 remaining things. So we'd put that off for some future date. So that's kind of what we're recommending, but because of the discussion in the spring, I just wanted to make sure that the board was comfortable with that.
Valerie?
So Becky, could you please refresh my memory? How much were the bleachers?
We're
Well,
still
we
trying to
don't.
figure that
We
out.
really don't have a firm price. I think, John, would you say around 200,000 would be the closest number? Sure. Or
This is very chicken and egg conversation. Get ready.
Right. It really is, because if you said, all right, we have $150,000 for bleachers, we could go buy a system of bleachers for $150,000. It might not be the same capacity that we initially talked about. We might have to talk about the number of seats versus a press box. We might have to wrestle with those things. So, which system do we use? There's kind of a lot of variety to it. I think the thought is if the board is interested in pursuing this, and some of the fundraising opportunities that Becky suggested, once we have kind of a target number that we all kind of feel comfortable we can get to between contingencies left from the construction job and what people feel comfortable they might be able to fundraise, then we can find a bleacher system that'll fit that price tag and make the decisions about the number of seats and the press box and all of those various amenities that are appropriate.
So are you guys thinking that we would use the 115 that are still remaining and then supplement with fundraising, or what other option? Any other options other than fundraising and the 115?
Yeah, we got to deduct what we have to pay our attorneys to get that $1,000 a day for us. So.
Yes. Don't. Yeah. That. Yeah.
Fred, do you put your hand? So come on up. Well, either of you, both of you. I don't care.
I think they go together.
Right.
Limited time, and he talks. I was the one who got the extra money, but you can go tell him.
See, nobody.
John is not embarrassed to blow his own horn.
Yeah.
So I heard John Simino just say that we've got somewhere between 100 and 115 in the project, and we think we've got between 80 if we collect everything, and allowing for some uncollectibles, which frankly we've had none so far. We've had $1,500 on $2.3 million. We think we have between $80,000 and $100,000 that we can devote to bleachers also. So John's been bugging us to say, how much money you got? And we've been saying back to him, you tell us what the bleachers cost, and we'll tell you how much money we got. So anyway, we're in that process right now, but I think we'll have that amount of money available. So the sum of the two numbers is pretty close to where we want to be.
And one more question. The 115 does not include contingency money, right? That is remaining, but
That is the
other than
contingency.
Oh, that is the contingency.
Right. So this assumes nothing else happens Right. So, and we know things are going to happen because a lot of our contracts for our clerk of the works, for our architect, for our engineer, they all go through Saturday, the end of September. So they're all going to have some additional costs to keep them, hopefully it's only through November 9th, but potentially I mean, they obviously don't need to do much when everything is wrapped up for the winter, but there are going to be costs there. So we need to really get a handle on what we think those are going to be.
Now, a question for Michelle. You just billed for Title I. How much are we getting extra that is not included in the budget that was approved in June? I'm not saying we'll use it. I just want to know how much it is.
Title I funds don't get put in the budget.
Yeah.
Title
Okay.
I funds are specifically used for Title I programs.
Teachers. And
How much is it anyway? Curiosity.
We get about $173,000 a year.
Okay. And additional based on the last billing
We
cycle?
don't get any additional. We get up to $173,000.
Oh, so it's capped.
It's capped.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I mean, somebody asked earlier what are the potential buckets? There's the contingency in this plan. There's additional fundraising. And we do still have a capital reserve, right? I mean, not that I'm advocating that we want to use any of that for this, but that is a bucket that we wouldn't necessarily need a referendum vote in order to access to do some of this stuff. So, Kate, sorry.
So, I think you know what I'm going to ask, because I always ask this. If we go ahead with the bleachers and funding that with the remaining dollars plus whatever is raised in fundraising, what does that put us at for the total budget that we will have expended in relation to what voters approved for the referendum?
I don't think it puts us. Okay, I'll let her answer.
Well, so it will increase it by about the 80 to 100,000 extra that they can fundraise. But it was in the referendum that the minimum fundraising was this amount of money. It did not prevent them from raising more and us using more. Does that answer the question? Okay.
And because it's all the same project,
Correct.
we don't have to go back and ask
There was a
again.
minimum amount to raise, but it didn't cap us.
But then when you add in the 150,000 that we set aside, now does the scoreboard cover the
Yeah.
difference?
I think it does, because I think what we figured out was what the original referendum question was, our contract cost came in below that, right? But when we added back in the scoreboard, we got back to that number
So
with a little bit of spare.
So that we're like, if we spend the full $150,000, the budget will be about $23,000 more than what the referendum was. But the scoreboard was 58,000. So
Yeah.
Yes. So
56.
So we're getting about half of the scoreboard out of
Yes.
the original budget.
Right, out of the savings from the cost of the contract. Yep.
Now, is there any rush to make the decision now, or can we wait, see how the rest of the project works itself out, and then we make the
think
decision?
I don't think anybody is putting in an order for bleachers tomorrow. I think what we're looking for is sort of the direction of the board from a prioritization standpoint. John and Fred don't want to go out and raise additional funds for bleachers, and then they give it to us and we go, oh, we're going to build something else with it, right? Because they don't want to sort of bait and switch their donors. So I think what they would like to hear from us, and feel free to correct me because you always do, but they just like sort of a direction from the board that we agree that we'd like to get the bleachers, and that's our next priority in line over the other items, right? Is that fair?
Well, I agree that we want the bleachers, but I also would like to wait a little bit to see what happens with the rest of the project before I commit the 115 to the bleachers. But in an ideal world, yes, I'm speaking for myself only, I'd be in favor of installing the bleachers as the next item.
So we definitely are also worried. I mean, we don't want to buy the bleachers tomorrow because we know we're going to have other costs that we're going to be absorbing.
And I mean,
But it's just, you know, with whatever the remaining funds are you fine with us buying the materials for the dugouts? And then the remaining amount would go to the bleachers first.
How much would Region 10 charge for this storage?
If they do it,
Yeah.
and we're just now looking into that. We had that discussion yesterday. It would be free.
the
Okay.
labor would be free because it would be part of their
It
class.
would just be materials.
Okay, because I remember Craig saying that the shed was the priority number one for him to put the equipment, so I just want to make sure that I don't misspeak. So I would say shed first and then bleachers for myself.
I think.
No?
I think, Craig, you could speak for yourself, but I think, well, I'll let you speak for
Sure.
yourself, Craig.
So I do think the garage is the first priority to store the equipment. I mean, that's the best case scenario. But I think bleachers come before that, and I think we've worked out a plan that will make do until we have the garage. We have half the portable, chock-a-block full. You can't even walk into the room. There's still some mats in the storage, in the maintenance garage that has to get out before winter because they'll start to plow. And then we have the existing one-bay garage that was there in the first place. So right now, the equipment is in the room, but it's not put together yet. It's still in boxes, so it's really easy to store. So as soon as you take it out of the boxes and put it together, then it takes up more space. So I think with that, half of the portable, the existing garage, and either one or two more of those steel portable boxes, we can make do until the garage comes.
Okay, so may do until the garage comes may mean a couple of years?
Correct.
And you're fine with that? And the equipment being stored in the pods?
Correct.
Okay, then I'm back to my original bleachers first, because he's happy.
Craig wants people sitting in those bleachers at his events. Lindsay.
I'm unclear what Region 10 is offering, and
They're not offering anything. We basically went to them and said, hey, we need a shed. You're teaching people how to, in the construction trades, any chance we could provide you the materials and then they could use this as part of their learning. You know I bought a shed for my house that was built by the, I don't know, whatever the Lewiston one is, and they auctioned it off for a charity, but they built it as part of their class and then they donated it, right? So this would be a slightly larger scale than my little shed, but I mean, I think with proper oversight, et cetera. I mean, the other thing that we're constantly pursuing is, you know, are there other donations in terms of time and labor? You know, there's some local contractors who said they might be interested. You know, they couldn't do it for free, but they could maybe do it for a discounted amount. And I think John's prohibited because he's on the board, but I'm sure he'd build a lovely building. So, I mean, we're not saying that there's no way we get the shed built. You know, if we can find a great opportunity to, you know, supply the materials at a low cost and have someone else donate labor, you know, we're going to do that. I mean, the reason I included that money was I wanted to make sure we weren't dropping good money after bad on great equipment that we're sitting outside, right? That's foolish in my mind. So I wanted to make sure we were protecting our investment, and I wasn't in favor of moving the bleachers ahead of that shed until I felt comfortable that we had done that, and I do think that we have done that. So.
I think probably just like a straw vote. I don't think you need a motion.
Okay, so just a general sense of people okay with having the bleachers, obviously after the cost to finish the project, that has to be first. We got to get the rest of it done first. But allocating the remaining to the bleachers. Okay, anybody opposed to that?
No.
Okay, are you good, Kate?
I in theory I am, but that's based on, the status of the project funds at this point in time. And so I guess what I'm thinking is we have about $23,000 added on to whatever we have left before we start pushing into money that was set aside in capital reserves for something other than the base project. And that's where I don't want us to dip into.
I'm not sure I understand.
Or is that already included?
Well,
in that
just
number?
remember that in the summer, or back whenever that was, that is one of the alt ads, the bleachers, as long as funds are there.
And I think what we asked them to spend was not necessarily how much can we spend on the project, but I think it's how much of our money are we spending on the project. I don't think it limited accessing additional funds.
Right. I'm thinking more of the funds that we're using out of our capital reserves.
Oh, the 150.
Yeah, the 150. And so right now we've added in additional money, the 150,000, such that it's 23,000 more than what was approved in the base project. Right now we can justify it because it's covering 50% of the scoreboard, but once you get up to what the scoreboard costs and beyond that, you're paying out of the capital reserves for the base project.
I don't think it's the base project anymore, though, because we'll have satisfied the base project for under the amount that was in the...
So you're saying the bleachers are not part of the base project?
Right. They weren't. We right? Am I...
That's correct. They were not part of the base project.
And I think the 150, you basically were voting to use the money from last year, the undesignated fund balance. You decided to use up to 850,000 towards
The project.
the project. The motion did not say that it must be used for these three areas. It was just, let's put a little bit more in there because we know there will probably be other things. And Michelle used the PA, the scoreboard, and what was the third one?
The shed.
The
Or
shed,
the
yeah, the
building,
garage.
the garage.
Yeah.
Right, but we only authorized like 760,000 of that.
No, you went to 850.
We moved 850 into the capital reserves, but we only authorized 766,000.
Right, so the ad alternates up to 766, 650, but that did include the bleachers. That number included
right.
the bleachers, right? And I don't think we're up in that range. Well, I don't know. I'd have to figure it out. I'm not sure there's anything, some legal threshold that we're about to step over. Is that your concern?
No, because I mean, we can do whatever we want because we ended up spending it with money that we already had in
Right.
our reserves and undesignated fund balance. I realize that we don't need voter authorization to spend that money, but we advertised and had a referendum on a certain dollar amount that would be spent towards this project. And I don't want us to, because the money is there, just spend more. Or if we're going to spend more, it needs to be very clear how the money was spent. And that it was spent on things above and beyond what was originally voted on by the voters for things like a scoreboard that we were not going to have in the project originally, or the bleachers.
Or the lights, for that matter,
Or
right?
the lights were part
The
of
lights were part of the base?
referendum. They were part of
Oh,
the
right, the
referendum.
second question. Right. Okay. Okay,
Okay, so I'm hearing we're okay with that.
yes. Carry on with your fundraising. We will.
So the next update around this is around, do you remember back in the spring you looked at the arch? So the arch is back. And just so I want us, so in your packet, there is a sketch of the new arch. Right now, I'm passing around the old arch so that you can see the difference, because at the June meeting, you approved the original arch. And then when we had the original arch priced out, it became too expensive for us to fund. And so it was taken out as funds became tight. Now we have a donor that has come forward. It's really four, really. John, do you want to speak to this?
No, which John? No.
You, John Patterson?
There
No? Would you go to
You
the
gotta
mic?
come to the mic. We're live streaming now, John. People are watching you live at home.
There are 4 donors who have come forward who said that they would provide at their cost the stainless steel arch to go over the entrance to the entry patio. So is that what you're referring to?
It is.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's all you needed from me?
Well, for the moment, till they have
Fred
all
got
their
to talk
questions.
longer than I did.
know.
We thought you had more flair, but okay. So this is an example of what we were talking about with the shed. There's some local businesses that want to be involved in the project, and actually did this on their own. From my understanding, they sort of came to us and said, we think this is an important thing to include in the project, and we'd like to do it. So. It's different materials than what you saw in the original one, and I think that's probably why Becky handed it out. The original one was going to be some kind of teak wood. I think it was decided the maintenance on that wasn't fantastic, so the new version is going to be stainless steel with some sort of, I don't know, laser etching of some sort for the words on it. So,
Was the design picked by the donors?
well, this is what they do. The donors that do this.
Okay, so
Yeah.
they are the manufacturing
Yes.
for this kind of
Yes.
product. Okay.
Yeah, they're local contractors. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the one kind of caveat is that this offer stands for this fall, but maybe not in the spring, is what we were hearing the other day, because they feel like they have time.
Right, capacity to do it now.
So it's a labor issue.
Yep.
But because it looked different, it's a different material, I just felt like it was important for you to see it and make sure you were okay with it.
So does it say Freeport Falcons?
Yes, on the backside.
Backside, okay.
So as you're coming out of the field, back to the school, it says Freeport Falcons
Cool.
with the F, yeah.
I definitely think this is an improvement over the original. Yeah. And I agree with the maintenance issue. Yeah.
Yes, you gotta come to the mic. Stainless steel.
I just wanted you to know that according to the 3 or 4 vendors that are doing this, the estimated cost were they to charge for it is between $40,000 and $50,000. And they're donating the materials, and then there's $16,000 worth of labor that goes into it that they are going to figure out how to pay for, either by raising the money or by doing it themselves. So this is really
It's a significant
an
gift,
extraordinary
yeah.
contribution.
Yep. And I think the plan is that they will be acknowledged in the project where we are acknowledging the donors. Jen?
So you said that it's available for the fall, but maybe not for the spring. I mean, is it available to say we really want it and?
They gotta do it.
Okay, so it's not we can't like say yeah we want it. They can make it and then maybe install it in the spring. No,
It doesn't, this part of the, even if the track isn't in, this part's getting done this
Oh,
spring.
so it could
Yeah,
be-
so it's possible to get it done.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Spring. Oh, fall.
Or in the
I'm sorry.
fall.
Did I say, yeah, now.
So the only the only thing holding back would be if someone said, I don't really like it or something. I mean, like, it can be done, okay.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
We can't come back to it say no and then come back to it in the spring and say, yeah, we'd like that.
good to know.
Because we do that sometimes. So, all right. So everybody's on board with the Arch revival. Perfect. All right.
Yeah, thanks.
We'll share
Thanks
that.
to the donors.
Yeah.
And to you guys for facilitating.
Yeah.
Then just the donors. Thank you.
So I do think there's just a lot of positive energy, even though we've had a lot of delays, and it's really frustrating. I think I don't know whether it was in the fall that I was hearing from John and Fred there wasn't another penny to be had, and
we
they-
said never say never.
No.
We're just acknowledging what great fundraisers
They
you are.
had-
That we
they-
did not underestimate your abilities.
Yeah, and so I just think there is just a lot of positive energy around this, and as the track and field gets completed, I think there's just more energy that's kind of coming forward, so that's great. Now we have the art update. So Cynthia, do you want to kind of go up and just,
Yes. So you have in your packet 9B. And if you turn into the, you had asked me to communicate with the artist that we wanted to see the options with the lines, the letters not dropping off the page and a little bit higher. And then you had also asked for 2 more choices. So you have, there is no finish line, so you notice the letters are up higher and nothing is falling off the page or the wall. And then Freeport Falcon Pride, and then Protect the Nest. And I do believe that Dr. Foley had sent you a couple of communications around the Protect the Nest.
Yeah.
So, if I could make a suggestion for another change. So, when looking at the Protect the Nest, and even the other, There Is No Finish Line, they seem much more centered than this one, the Freeport Falcon Pride. And I wondered if we took the Freeport off and just had Falcon Pride, if it would look better. I mean, especially seeing, we have Freeport Falcons on this arch thing that's being donated. I just think it flows better and it looks more centered. That's my opinion. And then with Becky's communication about Protect the Nest, we're not in any hurry, so I don't think it hurts to ask as far as copyright and stuff like that goes. I mean, they're not painting it this fall, right?
No.
they were planning on
Were they?
doing it this
Yeah,
fall.
they were. I just,
Well,
yeah,
go
I
ahead.
just worry a little bit about how, I mean, I think that maybe we can ask them for another option, but I don't, I think they want a decision soon because they have people that are flying in to help do that, and
I mean, that was the original plan. That doesn't mean that, we can't talk and negotiate with them like, can this be
Right.
postponed till the spring? But originally, that was our plan to get it done. I do have originals from does anybody want the copies from the last meeting? Because who was it that suggested, were you asking for the Falcon Pride?
Because we did Falcon Pride the last
Right,
week.
I just like how it's centered on this one. I like how the letters aren't bleeding. I like them up higher. I just think if we just had Falcon Pride, it's more balanced and centered.
So
I think
here-
it leaves a
so-
lot of open space.
So here is what you looked at last time, because I just thought it might be helpful to you to compare the two side by side as you're discussing it.
And to your point, Naomi, I understand the Freeport Falcon part, but really, Protect the Nest looks unbalanced as well to me.
I don't disagree. It's just the Freeport one just goes out further. That's the only difference.
I don't know. I'm all about symmetry, but I feel like we're getting a little bit, Excessive.
So can we get a big falcon right here on this wall?
You can paint it, Naomi.
Can I
Jess?
I was just gonna say, I think, I mean, the bottom line is there is not going to be complete symmetry, no matter what we choose, because the walls are different sizes, there's a door in one, there's a center thing. I mean, I think we could spend 2 hours, and I think it's also a personal thing. I think they all look nice.
Times 2.
Additional hours.
I think they all look nice, and I feel in Cynthia's tone, which I feel guilt. No,
Sorry.
No, I don't mean it like that in a good way. Like I think, like you know, it's
We've asked them for enough.
Exactly that, and I meant it as like I think you've dealt with them. So I mean, we need to respect the fact that you have to keep going back and saying, oh, actually, by the way, they don't like this, and they want this higher. Like I think at some point you just have to kind of like. You know, pull a trigger on that.
And I'll tell you, the committee feels like we've spent way too much time on it. I had to defend our ability to discuss the art. Yeah, Sarah.
And these are going to be the choices that go to the students, and we still have an option for nothing on the wall, right? Is my understanding?
I don't think I thought we took the no art on the wall off.
You didn't need to have an example of that.
Right. There's no
No, you
example,
had-
but it's an option for the students to vote on.
No.
To have nothing.
To have nothing.
Okay, so not just
Oh,
the
like
picture
no
with no
art,
words, but
pure
nothing at all.
Right.
Oh my God, can you imagine we go back to them and
You don't
thank
have
you
it.
for your days of work. We've decided to keep our brick.
Well, so one of the questions that I
That's true. We throw them under the bus.
So one of the questions I have is not just for the painting on the wall, but for because I came into this process a little late last year. The track and field was already, moving along. Do we have an endowment for maintenance from Nike or elsewhere? And also, what happens when we paint this wall and it starts to age, and it will probably pretty quickly? And do we have any idea of what we might do if we want to take it off or repaint it? I mean, I think these are considerations. To take that off a brick wall would cost a lot of money. I've been looking into it. So it is a big decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there should be an option, and I don't know, just like to talk about it.
You could just paint over it. You could paint brick over it.
Just nothing.
If you're talking about maintenance, and if it starts to fade, you can, if you don't like it or whatever, you don't want to repair it, you can just paint over it.
And do we want to do that?
I'll do it. Oh, wait, I can't.
You will be then.
I'm going to paint it, and I'm going to paint over it.
And to my broader question, is there a contingency for maintenance for this project, which I can imagine could be quite expensive moving forward?
Have we talked to Nike about what the lifespan of something like this is?
We did, but I didn't bring that piece with me today. I brought it maybe, I don't know, a few meetings back. But they treat it with a certain kind of mixture. I'm not sure what it is, and they do a lot of that work ahead of time. They project it to last for at least 5 years before it would need to have touch-up paint work.
And who does the touch-up? I mean, we're painting it ourselves, right?
Right.
Are we having volunteers paint it?
So they'll
it's not
sketch it up.
high-tech.
Right. So they'll sketch it up and put the whole outline up there, and then they paint up. They paint at a certain height. I can't remember what the height is. They'll paint up above that, and then the idea would be that all the community would come, and it would be almost like a paint by number, and this is going to be this color, and so
You can do
forth.
that, Naomi.
So that's the process. That's the process to get the first piece of art up there.
So I just want to be clear, too, that I'm not talking just about this wall, but the whole thing. There is no endowment or anything. We are on the hook for all maintenance for the track and field and the wall. And
Yes, so
everything
how
else.
it
Okay.
worked was part of the decision to move forward with the track and field was the look at the cost of what it cost us to maintain our grass fields and what it's going to cost us to maintain the track and field, which is significantly less than the grass field. So the expectation was we would start a sinking fund to say, okay, we're not spending it on grass anymore. We're going to put it into a maintenance fund so that 12, 15 years from now, when we have to replace the turf, we've got money set aside, or, those sort of things.
And the lights and the PA and the bleachers and everything else that goes along with that, fence and everything else, so it's still cheaper.
Yeah.
I'd love to see the numbers on that. Is it possible?
You could go, yeah, I mean, it's all back in the old board information, so I'm sure we could pull it up.
However, I have to clarify, the numbers did not include maintenance of the lights and maintenance of the arch, the new arch that we're putting in. It was just a comparison, maintenance of grass fields versus maintenance of the turf and the track.
Right, the field materials, right? The track, the turf, the infill, the replacement of that stuff. Yeah, the lights wouldn't
none of the
been included in
ancillary, so it wouldn't include the bleachers or the dugouts or none of that
right.
stuff. It was just the horizontal surface that the kids play on.
And my recollection was that it was closer to being an even break.
Yeah, I don't think we
there
thought
was
we were
no
gonna
like
savings.
So we will have to put money into the capital plan going forward to plan for replacement of the turf and resurfacing of the track, which I don't know how many years that is. The turf is like 10 years, 12
I think
years?
Yeah, 12 to 15. I mean, I think we used 10, but I think it's probably 12 to 15 was what they're
was
saying now.
And the resurfacing of the track?
I don't know
is
about
how
the track.
often?
What's the track?
20. So we'll have to put some dollars away into the capital
Right.
reserves.
To account for that stuff, right.
Yeah.
Right, so that sinking fund of, instead of spending it on other things, we, on maintaining our fields, which we weren't doing a very good job of to begin with. Lindsay?
Cynthia, do you remember if in your materials there was some sort of predictable process for you mentioned, you said the word fade, but with paint, I think the worst possible scenario would be peeling and then all different textures, and you gotta get sand on the sand machines or something. Yeah. Or is there a process of prepping it or something so that peeling doesn't happen and it can just literally be repainted has somebody looked into that, or is that something we need to look into?
So I can answer. I was just trying to look up the email to find it, but there is a definite prep process to the brick to get it ready to have the best outcome for the art. So what happens in 6 years? Do they have to re-prep that? I don't have the answer to that, but I can get that information for you if you want more detail. But I was just trying to pull up see if I could find the email for you.
It would be helpful kind of to know in advance if there's something more involved than just painting over.
So my memory of the email is that it's prepped and it may start to fade where it needs touch up, but I don't remember
That's
them
all I remember,
mention
too.
anything like peeling on the brick. But I don't know, John, do you know something about art on brick?
Unfortunately,
Of course he does.
with the campus as old as I have, I'm very familiar with paint and materials on masonry products. Too familiar. So the issues usually come up when there's a moisture issue. So your old industrial arts building that we took down was painted block on the outside, right? You all saw it for years. It was there. I don't know that it was ever a maintenance issue with the outside of that building being repainted. So they just kind of give you a order of magnitude. When peeling things like that happen, it's usually a result of other issues that we would want to deal with anyways. It's because there's water coming in from the roof in behind the wall that's then evaporating out and then pushing that paint off. It's those type of issues that usually cause those paint failures that are the paint's falling off the wall. There's a bigger issue that we probably need to deal with. I think fading is probably your bigger challenge, is just some of the colors in the bright sun are going to fade. But, given what it is for product, it's not hard to find a painter to do the touch up and do the upkeep. If you go to Beans and look around, the boot gets painted pretty frequently, and probably people don't even realize that boot out there, I've seen it painted probably twice, and just because I observe silly things like that. because of what I do for work.
So Sarah's question would be, how much do you think it would, just a ballpark estimate, how much would it cost to touch up and repaint?
You'd have to figure out how many square feet and things like that. But if you're doing it with your resources, it's the cost of material and time you're already spending with your resources. If you're bringing in a painter, you might be talking a couple grand, for a whole wall. As long as the prep isn't crazy, as long as you kind of keep up on it, and it doesn't.
And what does that include? Keep up on it, like wash the wall, like.
No, don't wait. If you start to see an issue pop up, don't
Wait
kick
till
the
it's
can down the road until half the wall needs to be then media blasted. I mean, if you get to the point where the wall needs to be media blasted, that's where you're gonna have a lot of cost. And it can be, so the question also came up earlier about, can you remove it? Yeah, absolutely. You can remove it. It's a big process. You would probably use something, there's all kinds of alternative medias. One of the favorite ones right now is actually baking soda, that they blast it with baking soda instead of sand and use for paint removals. And then you have to dispose, of course, those materials and things. It can be done, it can be reversible. It would be at an added expense, but I think, from my perspective, I think it adds a lot to the project. So I think it would be nice to see.
I guess I feel like the no art option, if we want to go that way because we're concerned about cost and maintenance and those sort of things, I think that's a board decision. I don't think that's necessarily something we'd put out to the kids. And I'm not saying we can't do that, but I think that's our decision. And if we don't want to undertake the art because of that, I mean, that's the purview of the board. We can do that.
Yeah, but I think Sarah wanted to have that option as an aesthetic option, not just because of the cost.
Okay.
Of maintenance.
That option. I mean, it's their wall, and I don't think we should say you have to choose one of these. It should be you get to choose one of these or nothing at all.
Lindsay?
Devil's advocate.
Is your mic on?
I mean, we didn't give the kids the choice to have no landscaping in front of the building. I mean,
we didn't give the
how is
kids a
that
choice
different?
on
Yeah, I
having the
mean-
field itself. I mean,
yeah, I mean, I think that's a little bit of a slippery slope too.
Then why are we asking them at all then? I mean, we didn't ask them which trees to put up or how we were going to put together the field, but we are going to them to ask them about the design.
we don't have to.
I thought
Let's
we
vote.
Yeah, I thought that's.
I
what
thought
we
people
voted on.
liked that idea. It sounded like people yeah. Yeah.
I think it seemed like if there's art going in, I think a lot of these phrases are great, and if you can easily get student feedback, that's sort of builds community spirit. But if you open it up so far as to say, do you not, I mean, I suppose it's the same thing. In my mind, it's kind of complicates it a little unnecessarily, and I personally am in support of art versus no art. If you just ask me a philosophical question like, do you prefer art or no art? I think I side with art. So
And I'm not of the opinion that this is art. So so it's not art versus art, no art to me.
what is it?
It looks, this isn't art to me. This is sort of a slogan or it's right, a graphic. It's not necessarily art to me. I think if you didn't have the words on there, it might be.
So I did find the email
I did
about
too.
the maintenance.
I was just gonna go.
Oh,
So the plan for the brick is to power wash it, allow it to fully dry, and then go over both walls with a coat of white masonry paint. The paint will seal the brick and also be a good base for the other colors to be applied on top. These colors will also be masonry paint. From a design perspective, we think this is also the best way to get the cleanest finish on the letters. The brick will be sealed. The paint is mildew and dirt resistant and very durable. It should stand up to the elements for a long time. But since there is so much sun on those walls, it's likely that the colors will fade over time. My estimation is that in a few years, 5-ish, they may want to touch up the color depending on how much it fades. But I think overall, it'll last longer than that. It's just how vibrant do you want the colors?
So, I mean, it sounds like, I mean, we just need to make a decision as a board whether or not to have the no art option.
Right, so I mean.
Or like just maybe don't even put it to the kids. I mean, just make those decisions, right? Is that
So-
what we're trying to do?
Yeah. So if they're doing it this fall, that was the original plan, is what I'm hearing?
That was the original plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're running out of time. Do we have time to survey the kids to get this? I mean,
I think a survey, I mean, that could be pretty quickly mobilized for the school. I'm looking at Jen for that. I mean, you know, we
'Cause
put
we-
up a board and,
am I correct? Do we have to notify parents and stuff like this for a survey to go out?
really?
It's a policy. We have a policy that says that.
Policy expert.
But is that a correct
So
interpretation?
I haven't
Jen
done
is
the.
nodding,
She
yeah.
brought this up. It wasn't one of the policies we reviewed, but she brought that up at our policy committee meeting last Friday, and so it talks about surveys, but the interpretation of whether that's a classroom survey, you know. So
Or a board, yeah.
I haven't done deeper research
Right,
on that
but
yet.
it says if that does apply, we have to notify parents of a survey going out.
Right.
Which we could
which
do.
we haven't been doing. So we need clarification. So that might make
From a
it
time
longer.
We could certainly do that for this one, though.
But when the students, for example, vote on the use of cell phone and they vote, parents get notified? Because
They will going
I
forward.
never received any notice that I know that they voted. So are we starting a new protocol that we are telling parents when they vote on something?
I think the issue is we have a policy, and there was a great question about what does that apply to? So we're going to have to dig into. Have we been not following the policy, and how we communicate that we need to follow the policy for?
So are we supposed to
or-
wait until we figure all that before we can move forward with this? Because that could take a while.
Well, we can notify it.
I mean, there's nothing that says we can't notify them. I mean, we're not against. Just do it. Yeah. Exactly. Proactively. Just do it. No, we're not putting that on. No, it is not. Okay, so I mean, I go back to, I want to give the kids options that we are comfortable with whichever one they pick, right? So if the majority of the board feels strongly that we want something on that wall of this nature, then we need to be okay if they pick no picture, right? So I'm okay with that, but we just need to all be prepared that whatever they vote, 1, 2, 3, or 4, that we go with it.
I'm fairly confident too that they're not going to choose nothing for the wall.
You never know.
Right? So, but I just think it ought to be in there.
Yeah. What do you think, Jen?
I just wanted to add two things. One, if we survey, we can do it very quickly. We use Google Forms, and they can do it in one day. And two, when we've surveyed for things like policy, we have said that we're surveying to get their input, not that they would necessarily be the decision makers. So that's a pretty consistent message that we have given, to say we take different perspectives and yours is an important one. So that the board might consider not taking their vote as the final say, but taking it as feedback.
I would advocate for taking off the list Protect the Nest, just because I feel like we want to just get this done, and I don't want to be like back and forth with like
The Arizona
NFL.
Cardinals?
Or is it the NFL? No, it's
the NFL.
It's the NFL.
Yeah.
Legal team, like it just sounds like a long timeline.
Yeah, it would take a while. I didn't realize that we were doing it this fall. I thought we were.
Well,
It may end
I
up
do
being
want to say, the original plan was to do it this fall, but I mean, obviously.
So is everything else.
Yes, exactly. And so, we haven't said, oh, so can you come on October 15th? We don't have a firm date. So, I mean, by the time we make a decision.
They're waiting for us, and they may have something
Right,
else already planned in their work schedule, I guess is the best way to.
They've got other walls to paint, people.
I would
So
say
even
remove
so-
it anyway.
Even so, with extra, I'm like, I don't really want to have another board meeting about.
I agree.
I mean, I think it's just like, it would be.
All right.
Spending too much time on something that doesn't.
Yeah,
merit.
which we've already done.
Yeah.
So protect the nest, we're gonna take that one off, right? I mean, it's still, but do people feel that we should give the option of nothing?
Yes.
Okay, straw vote, do you want to give them the option of nothing?
Oh, you guys, it was just.
3.
Michelle, you influenced her.
You want to give them nothing? Is that what you're voting?
As one of the 3 options.
So,
just
Freeport
break one.
Falcon Pride, there is no finish line, nothing.
And understanding, like what Jen said, this is their input.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to go against the student vote.
Bring it back again.
No, but see, what it might do, I mean, what it
Okay,
might
if the
do to
majority
us.
say nothing, I'm not going to be like, I, as a school board member, I'm going to use my power to. Put
You
the
will
word
look at my
right
art.
now.
No, but I think what it does help educate us on, like, if there's a huge majority behind one or another. I mean, if they're sort of split, then okay, we'll figure it out as a board, right? But if there's like, oh my gosh, everybody hates Freeport Falcon Pride, which I can't imagine, but just say, right? Then we're like, oh, okay. You know, I mean, I think that helps educate us as we make a decision. And if, 98% of the people say they'd rather have nothing on that wall than the art, then I think we should consider that.
I will eat my words.
I don't think it's going to happen either, but.
So we started the discussion with potentially striking Freeport from the board.
Oh, right.
So I would still advocate for
Circling
that,
back.
and I know we're talking about this a lot, but
You want to strike it?
strike Freeport. Because I don't know if people say Freeport Falcon Pride. I think they just say.
I'm with Jeremy. I would just go with the 3 options. There is no finish line, Falcon Pride, and nothing.
So we had Falcon Pride here.
But it has to be
Mhm.
small.
Not cut off like it was.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess everybody feels strongly about the cutoff. I feel like the artist that probably knows better than me, and this is the way they like it, and it makes the letters bigger, which I think is good. I mean, when you can't bleed, then you shrink. I mean, look how much smaller those letters are, which I think might be what's driving your concern about evenness. Like, it's little and there's lots of extra space.
I also think that, I mean, and like you said, I'm not an artist, but I'm guessing that part of the bleeding has to do with that there's that space in the middle, and that artistically it might look better with that to kind of make that space blend together is what I'm guessing.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think Falcon Pride can go bigger too if you take out the Freeport.
Well, it's got it. I mean, the issue is pride fitting, right?
Yeah, there's some room there.
We have Falcon Pride from the last one.
Yeah, but that's
Right.
bleeding.
I
They
think
don't
you
want the
can
bleeding.
still reduce it just a little bit so it's not bleeding, but still that it's larger than it is with Freeport Falcon Pride.
So, who's in favor of just Falcon Pride?
Which one?
Which one?
The bleeding or non-bleeding?
Yeah.
And high or low.
Oh, Jesus, the high and low.
You're so micromanaging this. Like,
Yes,
what's going
we
on?
are. I know.
Are we allowed to do this?
I don't
It's
know.
like not my job.
I feel like we should just pick the phrase, and they're the artists, and they'll figure out how it looks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My opinion, but. All right, we got 2 for nothing. That's right. So, all right, so nothing is one of the options.
The bleeding option and the other option. 5 options.
No, that's too much.
Is that micromanaging?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
I don't really want to go back and forth. Like, I mean, there's got to be an end. I feel like we're like in an
Yeah.
infinite loop here. We're getting
Yeah.
revisions and stuff. Like, if we like Falcon Pride, can we just say like this existing thing from last time? It's like either this one or the Freeport Falcon that they've provided us. Like, let's vote between those 2. It's that, and then the
there is
finish
no
line
finish
thing,
line.
and then nothing. And then like that. Could we live with that?
Because we're not, I mean, if we're doing a Google Docs survey, we're just having the phrases, right?
Or are you providing this art?
No, we're showing, yeah.
I feel like, I mean, they may be put up on a poster board or something in the school so they can look at them, but,
Yeah.
I mean, I
I'm
think,
sure they're gonna
I think
see
we
what
want
it
them to
looks
see
like.
what it looks like before they vote.
I would agree.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you can put a picture in the survey or not, I don't know.
What do you
But-
guys think about as our objective to use what we have tonight to come up with 3 options
And done.
for the kids?
Yes.
And then we don't really talk about it anymore until we vote. Perfect.
I'm all in favor of that.
Good job. Okay.
Okay, what is it?
Well said.
Okay, so one option is nothing. We got that one.
I got
Done.
that one down.
So the
It's the only one I have down right now.
so we are okay. So we like some form of Falcon Pride, either Freeport Falcon Pride or just Falcon Pride. So you
yeah, how about we just vote?
let's vote for one. That's what we're going. We're going to vote for one or the other. Are you so?
This one.
Those in favor of Freeport Falcon Pride.
As it shows.
We're going to talk about the bleeding after.
Oh no, I thought
I thought we were
I
just
thought
gonna
the idea
pick
was
one.
like
She's saying
one of
this.
these.
Oh, okay. Everybody likes the no bleed version.
No, you either get this one,
We should vote between these 2.
or there is no finish line.
Oh, I see.
Like if you like Falcon Pride, it's got to be that Falcon Pride. If you like
No, why does it have to be that one?
Because we don't have another option.
The one, they're thinking, I believe, the one with Freeport Falcon Pride.
Just
to take
strike
off the
Freeport.
But having to go back and have them do another one.
Oh, they could just color over that Freeport part.
So I heard one option was if you could decide on the 3 options, that you would leave it to the Nike artist to decide whether it should bleed, go high, go low.
True.
I feel like yes.
Okay.
And you know we're going to get a
cartoon of a school board. Right
yeah. So, all right. So, are people comfortable with that?
With
Yes.
what? With what?
The
What
artist,
we go down?
we pick the words, they pick the layout.
You feel more
Okay.
comfortable with that than just just decide right now between these 2 what to present? What, this one or that one? I'm not.
No.
Right, so choosing between that without the bleeding and that one is the bleeding.
No, I'm just saying, let's simplify. Here are our 2 options, no
Pick one.
changes, just pick one, and that's going, that's a simplified thing. But I think I'm getting impatient, if you, so I'm just trying to figure out how to not continue to go round and round about this.
And let them pick what they want, how they want to
Okay, so we
lay it
don't
out.
provide artwork to the kids.
No, the kids. We're leaving it up to the artist.
Once the board picks their 3 options, then we will have the Nike art designers design it in the way that they think will be, visually the best. And then we'll show that to the kids before they vote, and then they would vote on that.
Yes.
And I just need to point out that the designers may choose to redraw the lines inside the letters.
Well, I think we can tell nobody wants the lines.
No.
Okay.
I think, right?
Yeah, I think we're just gonna decide on
The
whether it bleeds or
spacing, the
not.
size, the allocation up and down.
Full district,
Right. Right.
Okay, so we're gonna provide Nike with the 3 options we wanna see.
Words, yes.
And they'll do the layout.
And they're going to do the layout.
Yeah, and then they're gonna give that group of 3 to the high school principal, who's gonna give it to the kids, they're gonna vote, and then we're done.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Assuming we like their vote.
No, we will like their vote.
Right. Well, Nugget doesn't have to do anything for the blank
Take a
wall.
picture of the brick wall.
Yes. Okay. So there is no finish line. That's one of our options. Correct. Everybody's on. Okay. Good. So we have blank. We have there is no finish line. So now you are voting between Freeport Falcon Pride and Falcon Pride. Okay. Everybody good? Yep. All right. If you are in favor of Freeport Falcon Pride, raise your hand. Oh, really?
We went through this for that.
Okay, Falcon Pride, write it down.
I got it down.
Done.
Done.
Michelle, run, go!
Consideration and approval of the FY19 budget timeline. Blue sheet.
We have one.
I'd like it to be moved left.
Do you want the letters to flow or not? Or bleed? So there is one correction up there, the very first one. You're approving this at September 27th instead of October 25th.
Look at us ahead of the game.
Yes.
Okay, so this includes the budget reviews, right? So that's all the different groups. And then we added to the March 15th visit workshop, 14th workshop, the 6 to 6:30 Q&A, right? So we added that one. And then we kept the 6 to 6:30 dine and discusses. So did Erin say she'd feed us? Is that why it's on here?
She did.
Awesome. So that gives people an opportunity to ask questions before we vote on the budget. Thanks, John. And it also gives them the opportunity to come and ask questions about the budget once we, as the board, have adopted it prior to their voting. So that was, I think, the feedback we got from the last meeting.
Yes.
All right. So we need a motion. Valley, second. Jen, any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? None. That was easy. See how things work when...
Can I just point out that you've got Valentine's Day?
Yes, I know.
Is that for real?
Yep. You love us, Sarah. You're going to show it.
Candy always brings chocolate.
And when she travels out of the country, she brings back really good stuff. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. The rum things? We ate them all before you got here. Okay.
Right. You get me.
So new business. We are on to 10A, stipends. Consideration and approval of the following stipend positions.
The first one is the FHS Student Assistance Team, and we talked about that at budget time last year, and it is in the budget for this current year, and Jen's here if you have any other follow-up questions. The next two, the Academic Leadership Team and Department Chair, she has requested that those be different stipends. And if you approve 2 and 3, well, then we need to do a revised number 4, and that will change from, it used to say pre-K to 12 academic leadership team, but if you approve 2 and 3, then it becomes a pre-K to 8 academic leadership team stipend. And if you would like further detail, I'll have Jen come up and... Okay, Jen, would you come up and explain, well, why don't you just kind of give them a reminder of all 3? Because at budget time, we talked about the student assistance team, and then explain to them why you're requesting that the leadership and department chairs be split up. And the number 2 and 3, I would say, would not go into effect until next year, because that would need to be budgeted, and you would need to pass that in the budget process.
So the student assistance team is our team that has been meeting in different configurations over the course of the past few years. And the purpose of the team is to identify our highest risk students. And those are students who are struggling academically, social emotionally, and it could be a number of other factors that go into that, including attendance. And so those are really kind of our most challenging and complex cases. And so it's a team of teachers. Charlie Mellon leads that team, as well as some of our support staff that meets to develop a plan, a follow-up plan, assign kind of a case manager, all with the intent of supporting the student, ultimately for dropout prevention too. And so we do not have a time during the school day when this team of teachers and other faculty members are able to meet. And so the stipend would allow them to meet regularly, as well as conduct the individual work that they need to do follow-up for these students. So maybe do that one first. Any questions?
How are we doing it now? They're doing it volunteer?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
And you meet bi-weekly?
Yes. Mhm.
Every 2 weeks. Okay, everybody good on that one?
Great. And so previously we had a pre-K to 12 description for the academic leadership team. That was developed before I had arrived here. And we've talked a great deal that the configuration at each school is slightly different, with the configuration at the high school being very different. Where the younger grades, there's more emphasis on the 8th grade team or the 3rd grade team. We don't have teams like that at the high school because there isn't any teacher who only teaches one grade level. They might predominantly teach one grade level, but not one solid grade level, and they don't encounter other students. And so the role of those two positions has been shared in the past few years, and we are proposing that they would be two separate positions. They both entail a significant amount of work, but it's work that's fairly different. So the department really focuses on logistics and academic concerns just for that department, whereas the leadership team is the team that's looking at the bigger picture, our proficiency-based practices, our strategic plan, and our overall goals for instruction. And so our hope is to divide those two. Some people may serve in both roles, but we wouldn't split the stipend. We would have two separate stipends.
Are there 9 departments? That sounds like a lot of departments.
There's 8. Mm-hmm.
There's 8. Oh.
We have 9 positions.
Is there 9 on there?
It says
9.
It
But
says department chair, 9 positions.
I think, I'm sorry, because we included guidance in there as well.
so by department, that's like history,
Mhm.
English, math.
English, math, history, science, world language, PE and health, special ed, and guidance. I'm not sure why there's a 9th one. That might be an error.
Okay. So
Well, it's a lot to do on the fly. There's probably another one.
There might be.
The academic leadership team, so currently we have a stipended position, a team that covers the whole district. How many people are on that team?
No, the description covers the whole district, but each school has their own team.
Oh, I see. So this just, so these are not new stipends. This is a transition from an existing stipend that was sort of generalized to specific to FHS.
Slightly, because there would be an increase because we're asking for that department chair stipend as well.
Right, but the leadership, academic leadership, we've already got.
Yes, and we are proposing to reduce the time for that and then add the time for the department chair.
Oh, I gotcha. So previously it was one big one,
Mhm.
and you're separating out into 2.
Yes.
I gotcha. Lindsay.
These all kind of sound like the same responsibilities to me, just because I don't think I'm close enough to understand. Can you just give me like an example of something that an academic leader would be handling, and then something that a department chair would be handling?
Sure. So our academic leadership team, for example, has 3 days of a retreat in the summer, 3 full days, where they work on our five-year strategic plan for the high school, creating it, revising it, and then they use that plan to then determine what our PLCs are going to focus on. So looking at standards, developing scoring criteria, things like that. A department chair might order all of the materials that the science department needs and work on curriculum documents, look at data specific to that department, or they play a large role in the program of studies.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions on those? And that's all of yours, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then if we say yes to those, then 4 just is a revision of the existing one to be pre-K to 8. So it's not changing dollars. Okay.
Right.
So, if the FHS academic leadership is reducing in hours, currently do they sit on the leadership team for the district? Do they interact with the other people?
At times they do. it depends. So there might be times where they're involved in a vertical conversation, but not necessarily. We don't have a time where all the leadership teams from all the schools would meet. It would be a giant meeting too.
So like, was the math department chair, well, we didn't have department chair stipends, right? I was gonna say, is the math department chair, were they involved in the conversation about the middle school curriculum, right? 'Cause-
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right, Lindsay.
I just have a logistical question. So since these are referring to next year, how does that, like,
So people have them now, right? And they're sort of the double duty ones, and we'll change them for next year.
So people are splitting the stipend currently, and we're asking to not split the stipend, to have them be separate stipends.
so like, that would be more money, right? I'm
Yes.
assuming. So will that come up in the budget? So we can authorize this, but then we can also not fund it if,
Correct.
if that's how we prioritize.
Right, so if we say this is this is the stipends we want to have, and then every year we look and say, what do we want to fund?
Okay. I'm good.
Usually it's the other way around. Usually we fund it in the budget, and then they come back with, like last week's, or 2 weeks ago, we funded stuff in the budget, and they came back with the stipends all squared away. So it goes both ways, I guess.
Which is what we did for the first one. The student assistance team was already in the budget for this year.
Right. Okay. All right.
Thanks.
So we need a motion. Naomi, Valley, second. Any other questions? No? All those in favor? None opposed? Thank you. Okay. Yellow sheet, consideration and approval of the charge of the Strategic Plan Advisory Committee.
So this is the first step in the board goal about creating a new strategic plan. So I just followed what we have previously done in this district around different advisory committees. So I'm looking for just 12 members to serve on this committee membership. And the charge will be to kind of outline the process and to be the leaders of just shepherding the new strategic plan and getting that created. So I'm open to feedback on this.
Valley?
I think it looks good. One suggestion I have is that we clarify that the Board of Directors Strategic Communications Subcommittee member, it's not just strategic. We have communications missing there.
Or are we having our own subcommittee for this too?
Yeah.
That was
No,
which-
that
what was the
really was
intent?
just, thank you. That's a
Okay.
good catch. Strategic Communications Subcommittee member.
Okay. And then the other question I had was when people send letters, we used to have a system where the board member who was included in the committee would assist the superintendent in going through the letters of the applicants who would come. What's the plan for picking through the letters and choosing from the pile?
I don't have an issue with going with that suggestion. When we did the track and field one, I can just say that we were looking for a cross-section of membership that we feel like would add something to the committee. I think I'd be looking through the same lens with this, but if there's a board member that would like to help me do that, I'm happy to.
Well, you're going to have 2 board members from the committee, right?
Right.
And I'm not saying that we need to go that route, but
Right.
I would like for people to know ahead of time who's picking, because in the last year people have asked me who's choosing, and I don't know. The year prior I was able to tell them, well, the board member who is on the committee is the
Well-
superintendent, that's how they do it, but I don't know how we do it, so I just want to.
So on the track and field, I used, Michelle, were you part of that? I think I used and I think John Semino was a part of that. So there were a few of us that kind of looked through all of that and were trying to look for a cross-section. Would be doing the same thing here. I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to do it with somebody helping me do it. It's not an enviable task. Speaking about the track and field, there were more people who wanted to serve on that committee than we had spaces for, and that's always difficult. It's a great problem to have when you have more people volunteering than you need, but the people who want to be on there are always disappointed when they're not chosen.
So do people want to give some direction on whether superintendent picks or whether you want someone else helping her pick?
I have total faith in the superintendent picking the members herself, and I'm sure that if she had any questions, she would ask one of us, if need be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that generally, if you are looking for feedback, you ask for it, so. Yeah, okay.
As long as I get to be on the
You can submit your requests. But I mean, that's a good point, right? So if you're interested in being on this committee, then you also should send an email to Ginny. She'll send out something.
Oh, we'll
right?
definitely
Yeah.
send something out.
But if you know you want to be on it,
Yes.
then definitely shoot her a message and just, as we ask everyone to do, what do you bring to the table and that kind of stuff. Yes.
Just in terms of your other related materials in the first section of bullets. That's nice in general to include everything, but I was thinking of specifically those great satisfaction survey that we designed and the exit surveys. I would hope that those would be included in those materials, the results of those.
That goes under other.
Yeah, I
related
mean,
materials.
it's there. I just wanted to highlight it.
And then, so you guys have already decided the first Wednesday of each month?
I think that you have historically put something out there like that,
Okay.
just to give the person an idea of whether they can commit to that. If the board doesn't think that's the best time, I really don't care when it is. So if you think we would be better served at having it at a different time, I think we should discuss that. I've been surprised at how well the early morning has worked for a lot of people.
I think that the early morning automatically excludes mothers with children.
Well, no, I make it to meetings. But yeah, it is hard,
Well, children under middle school.
right?
Yeah.
Well, see, I
Young
have
children.
daycare, so.
Right. But buses aren't even.
Right, not little kids, right?
I think the fathers could do it. The childcare.
Yeah, well, yeah, my husband leaves before that time. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's never a good time, right? So if you don't have daycare in the afternoon, then afternoons don't work for parents. I mean, it's hard. I mean, we can do a night meeting, but generally people really don't like those either. Yeah. Look at all the people we have here. That's right. Yep. Yeah. No, you can't watch it from home. I don't know. What do people think in general about the time? Mornings?
I think it's good.
Okay. In general?
Do you have a suggestion of a better one?
Do you like early evening?
I'm really open to doing it. However, it just, I don't have young kids, so I can make any time if the board really feels like we would get better participation in the evening.
Right, because I gotta go to work.
Yeah.
That's true. Look at us. We ramble on forever when we don't have to go to work from here.
Oh, good idea.
Yes, Naomi.
I mean, morning, evening, I just think 7:30. I think at least keep it till after buses for elementary kids.
Yeah, but that's 8:45.
And then people who go to work can't do it.
And
Well,
teachers-
yeah, like you said, you're going to alienate everyone, but at least that, I don't know, that allows a little bit broader range. I don't.
I think you actually cut down on more people because I think a lot of people, they're able to go to work a little late, but if they weren't get to work until 10, I think you.
But also, if you look, there's 2 teachers and there's 1 member of the CEA. So, you know.
That's a good point.
They got to be in.
Yep.
And I know I won't be on it.
Parents, community members. Right there.
7:30 a.m.
Yep. It's better than the safety committee. Yeah. So we're okay with the time. I prefer it would not be the first Wednesday. Okay, so do you need us to do anything on this? You want us to approve the charge?
Yes.
Okay, so we need a motion. Valley? Candy? Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Are you abstaining? Did you put your hand up? So you're abstaining? You either vote or you abstain. They mark it down. You're a yes, a no, or an abstain. Okay.
Okay, so that's 1 no.
Okay. Consideration approval on a delegate and alternate for the Maine School Board Association Annual Delegate Assembly at the MSMA Annual Fall Conference on the 25th and 26th of October. So in your packets, there was an email, and then it's the white packets here. And it starts with MSBA. So the first thing we generally do is we pick the alternate. We pick the delegate and the alternate. So ideally, both are available to go on the 26th and 27th. The actual delegate assembly is on the 26th. So if you can't go the Friday, but you can go the Thursday, you could be the delegate or the alternate. It's in the afternoon. It's at 2:10 on Thursday afternoon. So do we have anyone who wants to volunteer to be the advocate? The delegate? Advocate, delegate. All right, don't make us force people.
I honestly would. The weirdest thing is I have a work training in Augusta on those same 2 days.
Oh, no.
But I really would have.
It is interesting.
Yeah. I thought that was so bizarre, though.
Yeah, what are the chances? Well, at least you know you're not at the Civic Center.
No, I met the senator.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I'm sorry, I've done it for years, but I'm going to be out of town.
All right. Who else do we have? I'm planning on being there on Thursday. I can't be there on Friday, but I can be there on Thursday. Yeah? Do you want to be the delegate and I'll be your alternate if you need it? Can we vote on that?
You do?
Okay. So we need a motion for Jeremy to be the delegate and myself as the alternate. Naomi? Everybody's like, I'll vote for that. It's not me. Everybody seconded that. Okay. All those in favor?
Who seconded it? No one seconded it.
Lindsay did.
Okay.
Although maybe we should have waited to make sure Valley didn't want to do it. We'll hold on that vote for a second. Just. Did she? Oh, right.
Yeah, I can go.
Okay, good.
So you guys can vote.
Well, good. So
I'll
you're
vote
not.
yes for whoever.
Yeah. Okay. So unanimous. Okay. So the other thing we did last year, but hadn't done in prior years, is kind of read through what the resolutions are that that they're going to be voting on in the delegate assembly, and last year we had some pretty good feedback, and we voted no on one or two of the things. I actually got up and spoke at that big delegate thing to share our thoughts on it. So I don't know if you guys have had a chance to read through the proposed resolutions that were in the package. To me, it doesn't appear like anything super exciting, sexy, or controversial, but I don't know if we want to provide any feedback to Jeremy in his voting capacity.
I would say that the one speaks to what Valley talked about earlier,
Yes, the
about
training.
the need for good school board training and the support for that.
Should be funny that people at a school board training are going to vote whether they think there should be more school board training, but I think by the fact that you're there, you believe that.
But as far as the resolutions and the packet, I read through it and it looks fine. Everything seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah. I thought the career and technical education one was interesting. I mean, I think we have, I don't know if we're unusually lucky with Region 10. Perhaps there's other parts of the state that don't have access to a school like that, at that level. But I thought that was interesting that they're really trying to push the career and technical education piece.
The acronym is, or the lettering is a little unfortunate because that's the CTE, which is the concussion disease that's coming out more and more.
Oh, is it?
It's also CTE. So, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, we're in favor of CTE. What? So technology in the classrooms, that's pretty generic, I thought. Graduation pathways for all learners, I think we've talked about that a little bit. How do we make sure that there's a path for everybody to get to a proficiency degree? What does that look like? 1.3 to me is just sort of a support for public schools as opposed to charter schools. And then the funding proficiency-based graduation standards. That's interesting that there was part of the law that said that if they eliminated the funding for the implementation, that the timeline got extended. Did they extend? No. They did. Interesting. So, all right. Shall we leave Jeremy to his own devices in his voting? All right. Oh, that was D. That was on here. Okay. So, board comments, Finance Subcommittee. Ms. Brown?
I was reading all those resolutions. Okay, so the Finance Committee met on August 30th, and I also have an update for the meeting on September 13th. On August 30th, we had a guest to our meeting, John Cimino, and in attendance was the full committee, John, myself, and Michelle R, and Michelle L, and Dr. Foley. So at that meeting is where we had the update on the track and field completion date that John just gave us the update on, and that's where we decided not to extend the contract to the end of October. They were asking for October 25th at that point in time, and as John stated earlier, we had already, or the committee, the track and field committee, had already extended the contract out to October 15th, and the finance committee just reaffirmed that we weren't going to extend it any further, and that in fact we were going to ask RAD or let RAD know that we're putting them on notification, and state in a letter the applicable fines within the contract and urge RAD Sports to come up with a plan on how they would meet the current October 13th deadline. And Dr. Foley was going to draft that letter and deliver it to RAD Sports, which she has done. We also had an update on the audit at that meeting, and Michelle L. informed the Finance Committee that this year's audit started 5 weeks earlier. You guys already reported on all of this than last year. And Michelle L. has been turning around any requests from the auditors within 24 hours to keep that process moving. And this will ensure the deadlines for all DOE reporting will be met. And it will also allow us to have final numbers to work with when they're building the budget for fiscal year 19. Okay, and at the September 13th meeting, again,
I would like to make a correction. I did not nominate you. John nominated you. I seconded the nomination. John immediately put his hand up and nominated you.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yep, okay. Okay, so John, myself, and Michelle R. and Michelle L. were in attendance, and we had to nominate a chair. John has been our chair the last couple of years because he usually misses this meeting, and we nominate him for him. So John nominated me, and Michelle R. seconded, and a unanimous vote I lost myself here. Oh, a unanimous vote for Kate was noted. Okay. So now I am the new Finance Committee chair. At that meeting, we reviewed a list from the prior year of items that we usually work on throughout the year, and we just went through that work plan and chose what ones we wanted to tackle this year. Some things were on there that we haven't tackled in a few years, like what were they? Insurance? No, not insurance. It was the
banking and audit services.
Banking and audit services. So those are the types of things, like every few years we look at whether we want to go out to bid for those or keep using the same people that we have been using. Michelle L. is putting together a calendar of the topics to be reviewed by the Finance Committee, because we did make some suggestions at that meeting. So we're just gonna, you looked at that probably again today, that calendar in the meeting? No? Okay. So we still haven't looked at the final calendar yet, and once we put that together, we'll probably report that out to the board. Other items, Michelle L. reviewed with the Finance Committee the track and field budget and expense to date. That was the green papers that we had in our packets today. And Michelle L. also shared with the Finance Committee the turnover savings calculation. And Michelle L. shared with the Finance Committee the savings of taking the Durham bus routes in-house versus the old budgeted BOMAR contract. So the turnover savings calculation is just when you have staff turnover from year to year. Sometimes you hire in, you replace the position with someone who isn't as expensive as the person who was in that position before. So she just gave us like a rough report out of what the savings were from last year to this year with the new hires. And we are seeing a savings now with having brought in the Durham busing from BOMAR. And that's it.
Questions for Kate? All right, thank you. And our other committee is the policy subcommittee report, which is Candy, right?
You basically have 3 policies in there that are second reading. The changes you all suggested, and I guess we need to vote on those. The student achievement, evaluation of student achievement, transcripts and academic achievement, and promotion, retention, and acceleration of students.
Can I ask a question on one of the policies that you guys reviewed but didn't change? So it says that on your report here, it says policies reviewed but no changes recommended. The school volunteers one, I feel like that was one that was in flux last year and sort of dovetailed with the coaching volunteers, and we have kids in classrooms and taking or we have volunteers in classrooms, but we don't do the same due diligence that we do. I mean, what is our policy around student volunteers and what our due diligence background stuff is before we let them in classrooms with kids? And should it right to volunteer with the students? Right.
Well, I don't have the policy in front of me, but. So you're asking what our due diligence is? So we do background checks on anyone who's going to volunteer.
Okay, so I volunteer in the classroom. I don't believe I've been through a background check.
I think that was something, Michelle, we talked about that. It was very different at Pownell and Durham and Freeport in the expectation of how classroom volunteers were kind of vetted to go into the classroom. So I don't know is that what?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
So I've just gone through this process because as the school year is starting, we got an email looking for volunteers. So we were given a choice of going to do an orientation, or we could watch a video online, and then you'd reach out to the appropriate principal, which I did, Julie Nickerson in this case. And then she says you sign a confidentiality form, and that's pretty much it.
I have signed that form.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to have to talk about that at the administrative team because we already did talk about that and that wasn't my understanding. So we'll bring that back.
Okay.
Because we have them back. We talked about a process where they would complete a form, and then those would go to central office, and then they would go through a background check because we have access to that. We already have the capability to do that, and then they would get the list. The administrators would get the list back that would say would go just to the administrator because it's confidential. Say yes, they're okay, or no. And then,
is this different than the form that's the confidentiality, like that says you won't talk about kids you see in the classroom? Is it the same form?
It would be
I filled
your
that
name.
out, but I
Yeah,
don't
it would be
think I've
your
had another
name,
form.
your birthday, where you want to, So it would be a standard form for everybody. So we need to talk more about that. I'm feeling so we'll bring that back to B team, and
Should we look at the policy?
Yep, I think we should. Yep.
Just because I have a question about when you say the background checks, like when you
Correct.
do that, I mean, I'm assuming then you would have to have an additional policy written about what you'd have to get out of a background check to exclude your.
So
I think it's at their discretion, I bet.
Right.
Whose discretion is what I mean. Like if you get a background check back that's a parent, that's you can just say like we're that person we don't want in the classroom.
Correct. We also do that just in the hiring. So, something may come back on a background check that happened 30 years ago. And once the person describes it, we might be comfortable with still hiring them. Where if it was something that happened yesterday, we've had cases with coaching and different things even this year where we've just said, no, thank you. So we wouldn't want it, I don't think, written in a policy that if somebody, I'm just going to throw out an example, had an OUI, 40 years ago, that anybody with an OUI will be excluded from volunteering.
Yeah, I guess what I'm asking is that if it's a parent.
Can you prevent a parent from volunteering?
Right.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
They can come in and get their kid, right? I mean, it doesn't mean they have to be allowed to volunteer in the classroom.
Correct.
Okay, that was my question.
So I just pulled the policy up, and it says the superintendent shall be responsible for developing a screening protocol for use by the building principal to approve volunteers. So the policy itself may not change. It's what we put in the procedures.
Gotcha.
Or making sure the procedures are being followed.
And we need to, and that's what we'll follow up on.
Right, so the policy
next
may
week.
be good, right?
Yes, and that is why the policy didn't change.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. It's a great question. I'm glad it got brought up.
Is that is the school volunteer policy, does that have the procedures also posted on, like, along with the policy, or is this something that is, we're not calling it procedures.
Right.
You're using the term procedures, but it's not the same as when we have a policy with an accompanying procedure
Correct.
laid out. It's
So
just-
if you go on the website, you'll see on the left side the policies that are adopted by you, the board, are on the left, and we have some of the accompanying procedures off to the right that are paired up under the same category. So we don't have all of the procedures on there. This would be a good one to put on there once we make sure that it's being followed and we have a common understanding.
Yeah.
That would make perfect sense to put that one on there.
Valley.
So when you guys review this policy, may I suggest that you also clarify for prospective parents or whoever else wants to volunteer that they will go through a background check? Because right now I did do that course, and there's nothing there that says that you will be subject to a background check.
So and so when you talk about the course, one of the things I just talked to David Watts, who's community programs and adult ed, is to have conversation with one of the high school teachers who in the past, and I may not know what her name, but she had worked with him to set up a course for everyone. And so we're looking at doing that so that there's consistency across the RSU on what exactly the training will look like, so it's not so different. So I have talked with Dave Watts about that, and so he's got things in the works for that.
And also the training has evolved during the past years, but for parents like myself who have been volunteering for a long time, I don't retake the test retake the
correct
training every year. We're kind of grandfathered and exempted, so if anything is changing, we're not getting caught up on the new things. So that's another thing to look into, that maybe everybody needs to start from zero when you have the new training.
Right, and then perhaps a rotation of every 2 years that you would, because things can happen even with background checks in a couple of years. So I think we could work that into the procedures.
Yeah, I don't think I ever did a training.
Yeah. So I've been in districts where that was the process, where there was a training that was consistent. You did bloodborne
you have a training, it's
pathogens
just not consistent.
and confidentiality and all of those things. And what do you do if this happens and someone's bleeding and all those kinds of things. So, and then there was individual handbooks for procedures for the building, like start and stop time, what do you do for lunch break? How do you sign out, punch out if you have to punch out, and those kind of detailed things.
Yep. Okay.
We're separated, so we definitely have some work to do on that. But the policy, it should be fine the way it is, and it's just the procedure part.
Great.
Thank you.
Sorry, that wasn't even on your list of things to
No,
talk
I'm
about.
glad you brought that up, because I wouldn't have realized that wasn't happening, because we did have some conversation. So thank you. So, do you want me to? Okay. The way that it's written on the agenda and the way that they're packaged is a little bit different. So do you want to start with the second read or the first read?
Let's get rid of the second read.
Okay. So we can feel like we've accomplished. Yay. All right. So go to the third or the second policy, which is IK. So what we did was we went back and took your feedback, and we undeleted. There was a paragraph on the top of IK. We undeleted that. And the next one, we had made the changes of, I think it was Kate that brought up putting first semester of their senior year on letter I, page 2 of 3 of IKC. And that's in 2 different sections there. And then we had deleted a redundancy on the page after that. There was one that was repeated, and we changed for the classes of 2021 because it said the same thing in the 2 bullets. So basically those, we just made the changes that you had, and a couple of grammar, or not grammar, but punctuation. Thank you, Kate. So that's all we've done with those. That's different from last time.
That was it for all 3 of those?
Yes.
Okay. And the IKE one. Okay. So do we have a motion? Valley, second? Jen, any other questions? No? All those in favor? None opposed? Thank you.
Can I cheer?
Yes. Yeah, we've been working on those since what? May?
Oh, maybe an earlier.
January. Of what year? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so now we have a new one.
Yes, this is first read for EEBB, use of private vehicles on school business. So you see some additions to the policy, and then I'm going to point out a couple of particular areas. So I'll go to the easier one first. So the last paragraph, privately owned vehicles, we had done some consulting with insurance, and Michelle and I had talked with Charlotte Bates, and those are suggested so that it really points out if there's an accident, it goes to the driver's insurance first, and the responsibility there. If you look up above on H and I, so we batted these two around, maybe 3 meetings, I think, and I think we've got it right, I think. So on letter H, and Craig was involved with the discussion of this too, on letter H, no student will be allowed to transport other students on field trips or out-of-district school-sponsored activities. And the added sentence is, this does not include students driving each other to and from school, because we know that happens all the time, and to and from extra or co-curricular activities within the RSU. So if they're going to a game or some practice that may be out of the district, then there was a process that we would want to follow. And if they're going from, where would they typically go from one field to another?
From here to the Hunter Road, right?
Yeah, here to the Hunter Road. Okay, so that they could actually go home from school, get in the car, and then go to the Hunter Road, or leave from here and go to the Hunter Road. So we exempted that part.
But they couldn't go to a game outside of the district.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's for your consideration.
Yeah, we don't even allow them to go with parents. If they have to ride the bus to the away game, they can come home, and extenuating circumstance, they have a doctor's appointment in Portland and the game's in Waynfleet that afternoon, then they can just drive right there.
Okay.
And I is, in addition, parents will be informed whenever private vehicles will be used to transport their children for a field trip or other school purposes that are out of district, including sports, and be required to sign a permission form in advance. And Craig has a permission form that is already in place, and he's anxious for this policy to go through.
Okay.
So those are the biggies.
Any questions on Valley?
So what happens if a student chooses to go to, I don't know, some really long meet that's day long, and they're supposed to, say it's cross country, and they run at 4 and the bus leaves at 6 a.m. Can they just ride themselves there rather than spend the whole day there?
So the only instance that would be a track meet, and typically the track team travels together, and if your event is the first event or the last event, that the team travels together. In an extenuating circumstance, that can't happen. The kid can't make the bus because they're at a doctor's appointment, then we allow the parent to drive them to the meet. But otherwise, they all ride the bus.
So what happens if a student chooses to drive to Manchester, say? They just had a meeting.
We would not allow them to do that.
But if they got there, they wouldn't be allowed to compete. Would that be the repercussion?
Yep.
Once they got there? Okay.
Yep.
Is that made clear somewhere in the student handbook?
It's
or
in the
whatever?
athletic handbook, yep.
Okay.
So what this does is, and Cynthia didn't explain this, but, well, she kind of did. When students come to school in the morning, they can, there is a bus provided, but they choose not to use the bus, and they drive a vehicle and they pick up their friend down the street. So we have a bus to Hunter Road. They choose not to use it, and they take their friend to Hunter Road. Hunter Road is an exception this year. So next year, it will only be golf, indoor track,
football,
Nordic skiing at Pineland, and football at Pownell Road. But in all those places, with the exception of Saturday morning skiing at Pownell, well, football won't be, because it'll be in the district, and so won't golf. So next year it will only involve, or actually, if you pass this, the out of district will be Pownell Road, Nordic skiing, and indoor track at Brunswick. All of our other practice sites are within district, or we bus them there, like alpine skiing.
Hockey.
So ice hockey as well would require that form.
Now, there is one meet, which is the States for Alpine, that parents actually drive their kids there, because they're only a handful who stay.
Well, that varies from year to year, depending on where the site is and how many kids are going, but we typically bus them there, and then the last couple times the bus has stayed and has bused them to and from the venues. When we went to Sugarloaf for Nordic, and at Mount Abram, the bus may have come back and parents brought them from the hotel to the mountain.
Do we need, I mean, is it assumed, because I know there's rules about within a year of getting your license, you can't have another kid in the car. Like, is it assumed that anytime they're driving within the district with other kids, that they're doing it under the rules that they have to abide by? I
think it's assumed.
Okay. All right, because we state other things that are you would think would be assumed, but yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay.
So I have one more question for Craig.
Okay.
But you said, Craig, that under extenuating circumstances, then you would give the parent permission to bring the kid from the doctor in Boston to the meet in whatever, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and not force them to drive back and take the bus and go back to New Hampshire.
Correct.
So what is the process for getting that exemption? Parents need to petition you by writing? I mean, is that explained somewhere?
It is in our athletic handbook that says they have to seek approval from myself or the principal, and it's either a phone call or an email. Hey, we have a game at Waynfleet at 3. The doctor's appointment is in Portland at 1. I'm just going to stay in Portland and bring them there instead of driving them back, and and that's those are a no-brainer. It just makes sense.
Okay. Kate.
I don't see it in here anywhere. I just want to make sure there's nothing in here that prevents a parent from taking an athlete or student home from a after school activity out of district.
So I can speak to games and athletic games. Most coaches have the rule that as a team, you go as a team, you come back as a team. But I hope coaches also use some discretion if they're playing a game in Gray and there's a Pownell parent that says, I don't want to drive by my house to go to Freeport to get her off the bus to bring her back to Pownell. I think there are those extenuating circumstances that my daughter has a big test tomorrow and we don't want to wait. I need to get her home so she can study. But for the most part, the handbook says students will use school-provided transportation to and from games. But we also have a sign out, so if a parent wants to take a student home, they can also be signed out.
Yep.
Sorry. It says that field trip, it's the second line, then or other school purposes that are out of district, including sports. So what happens, say, if a student is transported from Freeport Middle to Durham Community School? The parents are not informed if they are driven in private vehicles? Because even though it's it's a distance. So we have a policy that they are allowed to be transported without parents knowing from one school to another.
Why would we do that? Why would we be moving kids between?
I've had a teacher that has taken my son when he was at Pownell to Durham for like some band thing in her private vehicle. But she notified me.
Right, but here it says that they won't be required to notify you because it's from one school to another.
Parents will be informed whenever they're out of district.
So do you think it should just strike the out of district? So parents will be informed whenever private vehicles will be used to transport their children to a field trip or other school purposes,
I think
including
so.
sports,
Mhm.
be required to sign a permission form in advance.
So the only thing that comes to my mind, I guess it could be something blanket like for the year, but I know that we have, Jen, I'm looking at you, and sometimes we take kids for like a job. We were talking about this recently. I don't know that we get something written every time. We were talking about that recently, right?
I think call on phone.
So this says will be required to sign a permission form in advance. And so that's why I'm thinking that we're not writing it that way, right? And I'm thinking of life skill kids. Sometimes we're taking them to the grocery store or doing other things. And I don't think every time we want to have to get a signed permission form.
Yep.
So maybe we
So those are
inform
things-
them, but if you only need the form when they're going out of district.
Don't we sign something in the beginning of the year?
Yeah, we do.
To transport kids within district, there's a form that goes home.
Right.
Oh, so we have
But
a
I think
diff-
that's just for the field trips. I mean, that's even buses.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think it necessarily says private vehicles, but
Right.
it just talks about transportation within the
Right.
district, that you would allow it.
Yeah, the difference is when it's a private vehicle, you don't know it's a trained driver. So,
Right, but those are the two that come to mind right now that I wouldn't want to have to get a signed form in advance every time.
I would say another one would be, we have instances where kids have missed the Region 10 bus and a staff member has brought them to Region 10. We always call the parent, but there hasn't been a signed form. They have a strict attendance policy at Region 10 and we try to help if we can. So if we had to get parent signed permission,
Wouldn't work.
it wouldn't work.
And I can just say, in my history of being a building principal, I've taken kids home that have missed the bus. And if all of a sudden we need a...
I would bring you home, but your mom's not here to sign.
You're right.
But if she was, I wouldn't have to bring you home.
Start walking.
Is a caught.
So those are just a few of the examples I can think of right off the top of my head.
I don't necessarily disagree that we should perhaps be informing parents if they're going to be in a private vehicle,
Oh, I would agree with that.
even in district.
Yes.
so do we need to include that we will notify parents if they're in private vehicles?
Can you adjust it so that it's...
Absolutely. Yep, because it's only first read.
All right. Other feedback on the use of private vehicles on school business?
One more. Privately owned vehicles, the third paragraph. School will now be responsible for any accident or injury arising from a parent's transportation of her own children to or from a school-sponsored event or activity. How about other students who are not their own children who may happen to be in their car? Who's liable for them?
That would not be us. That would be the parents' insurance that would be covering that.
So why do we say that we're not responsible for their kids, but we don't say anything about the other kids they might have in the car?
Right. Why do we specify just their own children and leave out other people's children?
Do we allow?
I think that's what this says, right?
So I think that's even what, Craig, could you speak to that with sports? If you have a signed permission slip for some reason, you might let another student go with a different parent?
Right, so the permission form that we've used, I wonder if I can pull it up quickly. I'm going to try to go from memory, which is fading fast here. There's three options to check. I allow my son or daughter to drive himself or herself. I allow my child to ride with another high school student, and I allow my child to ride with another parent. And they usually just check all three so they can ride however which way they can. But it does say they do allow them to ride with other students, which is what's happening to and from school in the morning. Johnny picks up Joe on the way to school. The same thing's happening going to Hunter Road and Pownell Road. You know, we have buses, they just choose not to use them. And by doing so, we're assuming that their parents know so-and-so is getting picked up in the morning for school, so-and-so is being taken to the field by Johnny. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, no, because my question is that we're saying that as a school, we're not responsible for kids of parents driving cars. Are we saying that we are, as a school, responsible for children other than the kids of the driver? We don't want to be responsible for any of these kids.
Well, there's a soundbite.
It's just the way you said it.
Yeah. We said RSU 5 children in that instead of his or her children. Yeah. Any child. We will not for anything in the car.
The dog.
So maybe, so I think your question is that third paragraph, the school will not be responsible for my
Yes.
parents' transportation. The sentence above said the driver's liability insurance. Instead of saying parents' transportation, can you say the driver, or somehow word the driver in there so it's,
Are we relieving ourselves from any school employee who is driving in a private vehicle? We're relieving
I don't
from any
think we can.
liability. Yeah. So we can't say driver, right? We have to. It has to be a parent.
It could be that that's the only thing we're legally able to waive off is, hey, it's your kid and you're
Right.
driving. Like if I'm driving your kid to a sport, like a school event, and I'm sanctioned to do that by this policy because I've been cleared and blah, 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 I'm not sure the school can say that the school isn't responsible if I crash and do something to your kid. I bet it's just, you can waive off your own kids, but not us.
By signing that form, that gives the 3 options. I think that kind of waives their liability. I mean,
But that's just for sports, right? That doesn't
Well,
take into
yeah,
account
no, that's-
something else.
yeah.
that's just for out of district.
out of
Right.
district.
Right.
Yeah.
And the if we have an employee driving, we're responsible for that.
Right.
So, what I'm understanding is you'd like me to change the language to add to reflect that other children.
If the lawyers say we can.
Yep. Okay.
And I think it's gonna be student drivers too. I mean, here it's just the parents' transportation, but what if the student?
Right.
Student is driving. So that's where you might wanna just say the driver.
But you can't exclude RSU 5 drivers.
Can you say non-RSU 5 staff
Employees,
or
yeah.
employees or something?
Okay. Anything else on
Thank you.
cars? So we need to vote. We need a motion. Naomi, second. Kate, all those in favor? None opposed? Thank you. Public comment? She hung in there.
I did. Oh my God, this was long.
Actually, this one's not bad.
My first and last. I just have a quick question in regards to.
Can you just tell us who you are and where you're from?
Yes. Come on. I'm Carrie Stump. I have a sophomore in school here, and now I have a freshman. And I've been emailing in regards to proficiency-based grading because now my household is trying to transition, and I'm having a very difficult time with it. So I noticed tonight you guys did motion to pass the IKE in regards to, no, IKC in regards to the academic honor roll. And I've been asking questions in regards to this because I was kind of hoping that everything would be in place for the school year, and I was looking in the handbook and getting a little frustrated and frazzled and everything else with the transition. So with that said, it looks like you guys did pass the high honors and honors at a 3.25 and a 3.75 or better. So my question is Power School equipped to actually do this, to report a 3.25 and a 3.75? Because right now it is not.
So I think Jen looks like she has the answer,
Yep.
though, so we
You?
might as well provide it to her. She didn't sit through the whole meeting, so.
So, nice to meet you.
Yes, you too.
And I was emailing you about
I had a feeling.
20 minutes ago. Power School is equipped. Power School was the word equipped is difficult because we can manipulate Power School to do what we need Power School to do. So we have made changes, and it operates differently at the middle school than it operates here. Power School is quickly figuring out that if they don't adjust to the standards-based world, that they are going to lose a great deal of business, including ours. And so what I had explained to the board before is that what the state cares about is the standard level score. So there's the standard. Underneath that, there's the performance indicators. Those performance indicators average up to the standard. And the state cares about proficiency at the standard level. We as a school are then taking those standards and averaging them together to have, for the purpose of honor roll or an overall GPA. So we are configuring Power School so that it will average to a 3.25 or a 3.75 only for the average of those standards. A teacher will not be entering a 3.25 or a 3.75. The overall scores will be what average. So if you had a 3.5 in one standard, a 4 in another standard, that would come out to a 3.75 as the average for that.
Okay. And then do you have like a time frame for my household when like that will take effect, or we'll be able to see that? Is there like a timeline that they need to be able to do that?
So that's why the academic honor roll wouldn't be calculated until halfway through the year. And so that's going to depend on each course. So when we were looking at your son's grades, for example, right now he only has maybe 1 or 2 scores under each standard. As time goes on, that's one of the reasons in a proficiency-based world why honor roll doesn't really truly make sense until at least halfway or all the way at the end of the year when all of the scores would be there. So you would not per se, when you're clicking on his scores to see his kind of daily work, you would not see that average all the way up to the top until we calculate that halfway through the year. About
halfway through the year.
Mm-hmm. You could do the math. That would be the...
Yeah, which was what I was doing and realizing for middle school they were rounding down. So if you had a 3.5 and you had a 3.0, it wouldn't give you a 3.25 as rounding down to a 3.0 last year. So that was a big concern, which is why, and I think I put that example in the email too, but so sorry, but it's a huge transition. So
And actually the way Power School is set up for us right now is it's rounding up. And so so a 3.25 would go up to a 3.5, and so that's what we have adjusted.
So it'll be the true 3.25, which makes total sense. Okay. Not that he couldn't use a boost, but
couldn't we all?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Maddie?
No.
Okay. All right, so then I will take a motion to adjourn. Kate and Valley, all those in favor? All right, we are adjourned. 9:15.
10?
Yeah, no, 9:15.
Yeah, thank you for going through